Salute to everyone in the building, man. It's another Friday and it's another Falcon Blizzak live stream. I really appreciate everyone who's been able to make it so far. I see King Kakula in the building. Salute to you, bro. He says he's answering the question in this title. Salute to you. I see Billy the Goat. Salute to you. He is a master of understanding the narcissist. So I look forward to what he's going to say in the stream. Salute to you, Billy the Goat. We have Diego Harry, aka Diego If, in the building as well. Salute to you, bro. Good to see you this evening. Well, first and foremost, if my sound is coming in good, please just hit a 1. Okay, sound should be crisp. Connection to be crisp. This is a very deep topic to me. And I understand, of course, religion and faith is a very sensitive topic, but it's one of those that needs to be discussed. Appreciate that, Diego. Appreciate that. No Limit. Salute to you. Right. It's very, very pertinent to a lot of things that are happening, in my opinion. Okay. So the topic is religion turning Black people / Africans into narcissists? So in this live stream, I'm going to bring forth evidence, shall we say, that might basically align with this topic, with this question. Yes, religion might be turning Black people into narcissists, right? Self-serving individual that prefers to manipulate and use people. Okay, so I'm going to cite some examples. So bear with me. It's going to be some reading, but I think all of the things that I'm going to read that I prepared is very, very interesting to understand, and some of the things that we need to talk about. Of course, there's a live panel as well. So if you want to join in, the link is in the topic. Sorry, what am I saying? The link is pinned to the top of the live stream. Okay, and we already got someone in the back this early on.
Reinforcements have arrived. Reinforcements have arrived.
But bear with me. I just need to prepare the panel, right? This is going to be, it should be a good stream, okay, in terms of the information that I think is very important, okay? And before I start, man, let me just show my support to Diego Harry, aka Diego Ife, in the building with a £5 super chat. I really appreciate that, bro. He says, good topic, brother, man. I really appreciate that, man. Let me give you some of my gun salutes, man. I really appreciate that. Appreciate that, bro. Diego Harry, you know him. You should know him. He has delivered us with a great book that I hope you've read. I hope you bought. Check out his channel as well. Another content creator from the UK. Right, check him out too. So salute to Diego Harry. Really appreciate that. But yeah, if you want to show support tonight, please do hit the like, comment your thoughts in the chat. Feel free to join the panel or hit the super chat if you're able to. All of that is a sign of support that will really help the channel to grow and for me to deliver more of this type of topic, okay? But I appreciate that, Diego. Salute to Diego. Like I said, this is a very sensitive topic, okay, religion, right? Even while I was just randomly searching for Jesus, you know, as a thumbnail picture, I'm affected by the imagery. You know, I'm affected by the imagery, and that is in part due to how I was raised as a Christian, okay? And it is what it is. But I think that being a Nigerian, I have seen firsthand how Africans, unfortunately, have abused religion for their own ends. You know, I've, for example, seen family members steal money, pilfer money from their own parents in the name of ministry, or opening up some church or doing some pastoral work. And in the same vein, I've seen the same parents shrug it off, because in their brain they've been taught to quote unquote forgive and forget. You know, and by forgiving and forgetting, I believe, from what I've seen in my 30-something years of being alive, excuse me, those traits have never ever cultivated the willpower to stand up against abusers. You know, I think religion has pacified a lot of Africans in a cultural, spiritual, on so many levels, and it's been expressed in a very self-destructive manner. I think already the general African culture has been steeped in superstition, and I think religion just creates this environment of blissful ignorance. You know, why, I don't know, why thoroughly dedicate your life to the sciences, for example, which will in turn improve your people's condition, when ultimately, you believe that there is a God who will take care of everything for you. When there's no food, you believe that a God will give you food. When there's no money, you believe your prayers will enrich in your pocket. It has been, I've just watched it stunt a lot of people intellectually, and it makes people come across as infantile, right? Like a child, where other people, even if they might be religious, other people understand that in this realm, in this dimension, in this reality, that we need to strive. We need to, we need to do things that are in alignment with our situation, with where we are. We can't just rely on, quote unquote, the Holy Spirit to provide physical things for us, right? Most people understand this, but from my point of view, the African mind when it comes to religion is one of inactivity. Don't do anything. Just pray, just go to church, give your tithes and offering, and it will be good. If someone robs you, if someone assails you, forgive and forget. Don't fight. Don't be aggressive. This is why I say it's a deep topic. So yeah, this live stream is basically about how religiosity has stunted intellectual growth, and also how people use it for self-serving endeavors, right? For nobody else's good but themselves. And I'm speaking again about the narcissist. And I understand and know that the narcissist, quote unquote, has been a trending kind of topic, right? It's one which, when I see a lot of talk on narcissists, I've kind of, I don't know, maybe tried to take an objective point of view, in the sense that I don't want to come, sometimes, and I'm not saying all of them, but some people that report on narcissists often come across as, in some cases, victims of these people, right? Like there's sometimes a victim mentality. That's why I've always tried to be in the middle, objective. What they're talking about, okay, this, that. But the more that I've read into the narcissist, the more I see how it illustrates a lot of designs in the so-called Black communities all across the world. The self-serving endeavor, self-righteousness, the arrogance, the self-destructiveness, like, easily take someone's life, easily make a fool out of someone, your own best friend right now at 10 to 11 p.m. might be actively trying to sleep with your girl. And I'm not laughing, I'm coughing, I'm not laughing. But these are the behaviors that that make me understand that there is a narcissistic issue and element in the so-called Black communities, right? And I want to prove it, because there are many studies that have been done that state that on average, Black people have the highest instances of narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, I'm going to read a study about that. But yeah, man, I just I can't really deny it anymore. That's why recently I've been analyzing the so-called Black family and how it affects its kids, and the emotional and mental torture that a lot of people come from these families. A lot of it stems from narcissistic ideals, self-serving, you know. Question for the chat. Salute to everyone in the building. In your opinion, and I really should do a poll, but I'm just not on the YouTube kind of page. I'm in StreamYard. But in your opinion, people in the chat, and I salute to everyone, has it had a negative or positive effect on Black/African people, in your opinion? And of course, we can always talk about other people, but we need to knuckle down, and I like to figure out the issues in my own community, right? And I think that will have a positive effect on everyone else in the community. But do you think religion has had a negative or a positive effect in the Black African community? Press 1 if you think it's negative, press 2 if you think it's positive. What do you think? 1 negative, 2 positive. While I bring up this article that I want to quickly share with you guys, and salute to everyone in the building. I'm going to come back to the chat. Let me just share this thingamajig. What is it? God damn, so many windows open, man. What the hell am I doing? Is there any better window control on a Mac? Could I just come up and there's like thousands of windows? Okay, let me use my noggin. Let me think about this. Okay, okay, there we go. So that's exhibit number 1 before I come to chat. Why Africans are so religious. But let me see the answer to the question. Diego says undeniably negative. We've got JM Talks in the building. He says 1, negative. MJA 2873 in the building. Salute to you, negative. KB Jones in the building. Salute to you, bro. Good to see you, negative. 2, Kings and Queens in the building says 2 for religion, 1 for real faith. Very interesting. Okay. And yeah, like Diego says, it's a very composite topic. It's a complex discussion, right? So obviously it can't be, it's not going to be blanket terms that can smother everyone. But for me, overwhelmingly, I believe it's had a negative effect. Ifechi Michael in the building, good to see you, bro. He says very negative. Just look at Nigeria, for example, Boko Haram, etc. Even over here, SPAC Nation pastor, is that a pastor's name? I'm going to read about some Nigerian pastors actually, because a lot of stuff going on. Let's just say that. Okay, but salute to everyone in the building. Okay, why are Africans so religious? Okay, and I feel that this is very important. I know it's going to be reading, but try and hang in there. I know it's a Friday night. You're probably, I don't know, what do you have up right now? Do you have the hub in one window right now as you listen to me? Am I speaking to someone out there? Is someone bunning something right now? Am I speaking to someone out there? Repent of your sins, brothers. But anyway, why are Africans so religious? The reasons why Africans are the most religious people in the world are not far-fetched. Africans go through religious indoctrination from cradle to grave. Africans are not allowed by family, society, and the state to think, reason, or live outside the religious box. In Africa, religion is by force, not by choice. Religion is by compulsion, and not according to one's conscience. Africans are brought up to believe that there is no alternative to religion, when in fact there is. So in Africa, either you are religious or you are nobody. You are not a human being, you are nothing. There is too much social and political pressure on Africans to be religious and to remain religious. The social, political, and sometimes economic price of leaving religion, renouncing religion, or criticizing religion is very high. Africans profess all sorts of religious crap, even when they know it's all nonsense. This is an article by an African called Leo Igwe. He's got his age actually 46 years old. So boy, he seems to have lived what he's talking about. Okay. At home, religious indoctrination is the first form of orientation an African child receives. Who knows about Sele Church? Just curious, who knows about Sele Church? Because boy, that was one of the orientations for me. Dressed in white robes, all sorts of crazy kind of movements and chanting going on. At a very early and impressionable age, infants are taught to recite meaningless syllables called prayers. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Children are brainwashed by parents with various religious and spiritual myths. Their minds are infused with all sorts of religious dogmas. Parents ensure that children are brought up in their faith, the faith of the family and the faith of their parents. Uh-oh, sounds like indoctrination to me. Children are taught to believe and follow and not to question religious teachings, even when there is every reason to do so. Okay? Yeah, Diego knows what I'm talking about. For anyone else who doesn't know what I'm talking about, just look out on a Sunday. If you see any Nigerian looking people in white robes, some of them holding rods, like look like gold rods. Yeah, that's Saleh. We got JM Talks in the building. Show love, man. I really appreciate that, bro. Appreciate you showing up as well. Let me give you a salute. Let me give you a salute. Let me give you a.
Yeah, baby.
That's the wrong salute, bro. But I'm slow with the thingamajigs, man. But I appreciate you, JM Talks. Appreciate you coming through. Another UK content creator. Check out his channel. He's got good, great stuff coming ahead. Watch this space as well. But this guy speaking truth again, a middle-aged man, African, surely he knows what he's saying. Let me continue because I think it's very noteworthy. Okay, African children are brought up to believe them and to swallow them hook, line, and sinker. He's talking about the mythology and stuff like that. Not to question one's family's religion is seen as virtuous and as a mark of a good child. This religious tradition is upheld and handed down unchallenged from one generation to another in Africa. The religious brainwashing continues in schools. Most African colleges are religious indoctrination centers. Western missionaries and Arab jihadists brought formal education to the continent. They established schools to win converts and recruit new members, not really to educate Africans. So schools in Africa are covert churches and mosques. Education is faith-based, and this religious tradition is still upheld in most schools across the continent. Okay, he's talking about the Muslims now. In Muslim schools, children are made to recite that they are Muslim children, that they believe in Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. What do you expect from these children as adults after going through this religious drilling and being brainwashed by superstitious messages? Okay, now he's been a bit more, he's been a bit more, less objective, right? It almost sounds like he has a bone to pick, but, I hear him. Do you think they will ever grow up to say that religion, in this case Islam, is not important in their lives? As in their homes, African students are taught to blindly accept the so-called divine revelations without question. They are induced to try and have some encounter with God or to have some spiritual experience as a manifestation of faith or piety. Okay. He's got a great graph here, but with that being said, that's a good point. Great point. Actually, let me continue. I don't want to sidetrack. Let me read this part because it's quite interesting. Lastly, Africans are deeply religious due to lack of human rights, particularly religious freedom in Africa. This may sound like a contradiction, but it is not. Some may argue that the high religiosity in Africa should be due to too much religious freedom. No, it's not so. Rather, it is due to no guarantee of religious freedom, no protection or freedom of conscience. Africans do not enjoy or exercise their freedom of religion or belief. Africans are denied this basic human right with impunity by state and non-state actors. Africans are forced to be religious or to remain indigenous. Or indigenous, sorry. Forced to be religious or remain religious. And he's got a great graph showing here, which okay, you can see it pretty well. This map shows countries by I think they mean countries based by their quote unquote freedom of thought status. Okay, so freedom of thought, black equals grave violations, orange, systematic discrimination, yellow, mostly satisfactory, green, free and equal. Okay, so it's going to be hard to zoom in, but in fact, I'm going to share this link in the chat so anyone can pull up and read if you want. Okay. So as we can see, if you can see it, the whole continent of Africa mostly are in red and black. Okay, so meaning that apparently based on this, which was from the Freedom of Thought report in 2015, there are grave violations when it comes to freedom of thought. And Nigeria is also black, so Nigeria is also up there. And then a lot of red stemming from, what's that, Algeria to Chad, all the way through to Central Africa. Ghana is there, right? So quite important, important information, interesting stuff. Okay. So this is why it seems Africans are so religious. You know, we've been forced to be religious, and you know, to some extent, I don't really see that as an issue. I think the only thing is when religion starts to impede your life. You know, your quote unquote successes, the way you interact with people, the way you reason with people, rationality, right? And so you might be wondering, why is there a link, in my opinion, to narcissism? You know, again, I will in simple terms, state why it seems, based on a few studies, that Black people are often on the higher realms of having NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. You know, I'm going to read one such study because, again, I think that's very important. But in simple terms, most of these studies concluded that those with low self-esteem often project a facade, you know, or this type of defensive mechanism of having self-importance, you know. But they do that, they radiate this, you know, they bring up this facade actually due to feeling like crap, you know. And I think we probably have seen so many examples of this, you know, some with critical low self-esteem who, you know, thinks or believes, you know, to cover up that low self-esteem, they think they're important, right? But let me come into the chat, man, because I don't want to lecture you. You know, in a few minutes, you can come up if you want to discuss your opinions. And your opinions matter because we can go so many ways with this topic, right? If you come up, we can talk about narcissism in general, or as it pertains, in your opinion, to Black people. We can talk about if religion has damaged Africans in general, African society, Black people all across the world. Should we be religious? Or should we follow quote unquote indigenous religions, something that's been brought up in the city? You know, you might want to define your religiosity, or, you know, things like maybe religion has made people stupid. You know, this is where these are the angles we can go to if anyone wants to come up, okay? But let me see the chat. Where did I leave it? So salute to James, talks in the building. KB Jones in the building says, I've been around my North Ghanaian Muslim side of my family in recent days. They are trying to take me to Juma on Friday soon. No chance. So yeah, it's typical, right? So is it, I never knew that about Ghana. So Northern Ghanaians are mostly Muslim, right? It makes sense, I guess, closer to, what's the country above Ghana? Is it Mali? Online account in the building, salute to you. He says Africans are religious because Africans high level spirituality, but it's channels in Abrahamic religions. You know, I've read a lot of ancient historians' account of when they traveled to Africa, right? What's that famous Greek one? Is it Herodotus or something like that? You know, many of these Greek European travelers that went into Africa, they always noted that the Black Africans are the most pious, right? Very religious, very devout, always in prayer, always have these kind of superstitions, right? And many would argue that, the pantheons from like places like Greece came from Egypt, right? And if you know about the Egyptian, I don't know that much about it, but I've always known that the heart of that religion, or that whatever you want to call it, often came from the south of Egypt, right? There was a cult from the south that worshipped, I believe it's what's his name? This is the Hotep coming out now. What's his name? I think it was Amen Ra, but I could be wrong. But that's usually how it spills through. So like it's almost from the interior of Africa going down the Nile towards Lower Egypt, aka Northern Egypt, going into Europe. Some people have made that observation. I'm not saying it's true or not, but that's what has been said.
Reinforcements have arrived. Reinforcements have arrived.
Salute. We got another person back. I'm not going to lay before you too long, but I want to kind of tie up with the narcissism piece, okay? So a lot of studies say that Black people are high on that narcissistic spectrum, okay? And let me read one of those studies. I'm not going to go into everything, only the important parts that I think are quite relevant. Where are we? Okay. Racial differences in narcissistic tendencies. Uh-oh. But let me see who else is in the building. Ephraim Mackworth in the building. I appreciate that. The country north of Ghana is Ivory. Is it Ivory Coast? I never knew Ivory Coast was that up there, but salute. Oh, it is. Is it Burkina? I don't know, man. Is it Burkina Faso? I need to improve my geography. But salute for everyone trying. Okay. So again, this is one such study that is trying to claim, based on the what they've done to make up these stuff. It's quite old. It's over 10 years ago, but it's coming from Science Direct. And I'm going to read the basic important parts, but the abstract of this study is that Black individuals have been found to report the highest levels of self-esteem of any racial group in the United States. Okay, I need to also clarify, this is a United States poll or study, but I think it's still very, very relevant nonetheless, because the conditions are somewhat similar in terms of the global demographic of Black people, especially as ethnic minorities or as quote unquote downtrodden communities. Okay. The purpose of the present research was to examine whether Black individuals also report higher levels of narcissism than white individuals. Okay. Study 1 found that Black individuals reported high levels of narcissism than white individuals, even when controlling for gender, self-esteem level, and socially desirable response tendencies. Study 2 and Study 3 found similar results, such that Black individuals reported higher levels of narcissism than white individuals on the narcissism measures that captured less pathological facets of this construct. Study 3 also included indicators of psychological adjustment and found that the pathological aspects of narcissism were more strongly associated with the maladjustment for Black individuals than for white individuals. I think that's a key point. The implications of these results for understanding the Black self-esteem advantage are discussed. Okay, so basically this this study claims that, perhaps when they're approached, a lot of Black people state that they have high self-esteem, that they feel good about life. I've heard that in a previous study or poll, whatever that was, that I think it was Nigeria that was ranked amongst one of the happiest countries in the world. I could be wrong, right? But apparently from their studies, they are pointing out that it might just be a facade. A lot of people are trying to put on a brave face, or they're trying to, it might be a defensive mechanism. Okay. So let's see what is, okay, let me read the introduction at least. Yeah, this is a key point. Bear with me. I know some of you got the hub up. I don't want to disrupt your routines, but this is just as important, okay? Despite significant efforts to cultivate an environment of equality, minority groups often serve as targets for discrimination and prejudice. Members of these groups are most often aware of the negative view that society have of them, and this stigma can lead to several negative consequences. One of the most notable consequences is that members of stigmatized groups often report lower levels of self-esteem than other individuals. This pattern of low self-esteem for members of stigmatized groups has been observed for various groups, including women, overweight individuals, individuals with physical abnormalities like burn victims, and individuals with severe mental illnesses. The most prominent explanation for the low levels of self-esteem reported by individuals who belong to groups that are devalued by society is that they internalize the negative views of their groups that are held by wider society. So we're talking about, when we're talking about that facade and defense mechanism, as we all know, as we always discuss, a lot of, things in the environment might affect us internally that we can't always speak up on, right? However, this internalization of stigma explanation does not appear to apply to the members of all stigmatized groups. Perhaps the most notable exception to this pattern is that Black individuals, i.e. African Americans in this case of sub-Saharan biological ancestry, report higher levels of self-esteem than any other racial group in the United States, including white individuals. The heightened level of self-esteem reported by Black individuals is often referred to as the Black self-esteem advantage. Findings such as the Black self-esteem advantage have led to an alternative explanation concerning the effect of stigma on self-perception, which is referred to as stigma as self-protection. In essence, this explanation suggests that being a member of a stigmatized group may serve as a buffer against adversity because members of devalued groups are able to externalize negative experiences by attributing them to discrimination or prejudice. Yeah, I want to say something about this, but I know now is probably not the time because that is another thing, right? We talk about self-defeatist mentality, racism, everything is racism. It's always racism. It might not be because I'm a bad person or I have bad personality traits or traits that are unlikable. It must be racism. It is assumed that this externalization of negative experiences would help to bolster or protect the self-esteem of stigmatized individuals. This explanation is appealing for a variety of reasons, but it has important limitations, including the fact that it only appears to apply to the members of certain stigmatized groups. If the simple version of the stigma as self-protection explanation was correct, then other stigmatized groups, in this case Hispanics, for example, should also report high levels of self-esteem, but this has not been observed. Okay, almost there. This is very important. The history of the Black self-esteem advantage is complex. Black individuals reported lower levels of self-esteem than white individuals as recent as the 60s. This is not surprising given the history of slavery, discrimination, and segregation that Black individuals have experienced in the US. I mean, over here, we could talk about, discrimination, segregation, effects of colonialism, for example. However, the self-esteem levels of Black individuals began to increase in the 60s and were commensurate with white individuals by the 70s, okay? Comparison. It has generally been assumed that the increases in self-esteem reported by Black individuals suggest a positive shift in how these individuals view themselves. But a recent series of studies suggests that the truth may be more complicated because the high levels of self-esteem reported by Black individuals appear to be relatively fragile. This fragility emerged in results showing that Black individuals reported lower levels of implicit self-esteem and greater self-esteem and stability than white individuals. Importantly, these differences only emerge among individuals who refrain from engaging in self-deceptive enhancement, which suggests that socially desirable response tendencies may generally mask the fragile nature of the high levels of self-esteem reported by Black individuals. Could this be talking about code switching, for example, or putting on your quote-unquote white voice to sound, I don't know, a bit more appealing? I'm just spitballing here. That is, Black individuals may not be completely forthcoming in admitting their insecurities and uncertainties. This possibility was further supported by a subsequent study showing that Black individuals reported significant decreases in self-esteem compared to white individuals when they believed that experimenter would know if they were lying about their feelings of self-worth during a bogus pipeline. Okay. Taken together, these results suggest that the high levels of self-esteem reported by Black individuals may be at least somewhat uncertain and possibly inflated. Okay, now, I guess this is the thing with studies. It's never going to be one-to-one in terms of accuracy or in terms of, trying to extract the data or information that they want. So there's always going to be, random kind of effects and stuff like that. But this is the final part, okay, about the fragile feelings of self-worth. The fragile feelings of self-worth reported by Black individuals are consistent in many ways with the classic psychodynamic mask model of narcissism that is derived from the perspective of Cohut. Despite important differences in their conceptualizations of narcissism, Cohut and Kuhnberg agree that the grandiosity displayed by narcissists may conceal underlying feelings of inferiority and low self-esteem. That is, the grandiose self-views of narcissists are believed to serve as a facade that disguises their deep-seated negative feelings about themselves. The contradictory self-views held by narcissists are believed to be at least partially responsible for many of the defensive behaviors that characterize these individuals. It is possible that the positive self-views expressed by Black individuals may be, at least in part, a reaction to the stigma surrounding their group. Is that inferiority complexes? That is, Black individuals may express highly positive self-views in an effort to protect themselves from the underlying uncertainty that accompanies their membership in a devalued group in a manner that is consistent with the psychodynamic mask model of narcissism. This basic prediction has received initial support in a study by Foster, which found that Black individuals reported higher levels of narcissism than any other racial ethnic group. Take that as you will. I'm going to post this study in the chat. Did I already do that? But yeah, for your reading, check it out. I did already do that. And again, I know it's a lot of reading, but I think that was quite valid to where I'm getting at. Okay. Yeah, again, I would say this about, I know the narcissism talk is trending. Everyone is trying to define or pinpoint the narcissist. I've often tried to, steer away from that because, hey, we all have some ego. We all should have a sense of self-importance. I, for example, hate it when people think, for example, that they are meaningless in this world, right? They are not of importance, right? And I think that's worse than having inflated self or inflated ego, in my opinion, because one is in a downtrodden, and one is, even if it's with a bad intention, trying to elevate. Let me see what the chat's saying though. I know I've got people in the back. I'm going to bring you up in a bit. So again, I'm trying to tie in why I do believe in a study like this that state that Black people are high in narcissism. And I see it, I've seen it, and I've seen how religion plays its part. We got, examples, for example, like a random guy could get money, could, attain wealth or maybe a new job or some sort of, monetary gain, and the way people use religion is like, this person might believe that because he has this gain, he might be highly favored by God, for example. This person might truly believe that the divine creator of this world, of the universe, actually cares about this individual to have financial gain. Or another example, like there's some Black parents out there, for example, they might see you succeeding in life. Maybe you're traveling all over the world, you've got a nice house, got a nice car. They don't like it. You're not looking up them that well. They might actually use scripture to rebuke you for not flying them out. You know, you're supposed to honor your parents. That, you know, they might point to scripture to try to guilt you in basically manipulating you to do their bidding. You know, even though they had the same ability to work, to earn, to save their money, handle their money appropriately, you know, they will choose to guilt you. Ironically, a lot of their money probably went into the tithes and offering in the church. That might be another topic though. Yeshua is saying it's not narcissism. The text just doesn't align with Indo-Europeans being Jews. You need to explain. I'm very interested in what you're saying, because this, you know, this also might lend into something else that's currently happening, right? Where people believe that it is their right to, let me not even go there. Do you see what I mean? Like, people believe it's their divine right to occupy some land. But let me get out of that one. Someone in chat, Brad whooped my ass. I was born to be chosen. It's a crime for Black people to have high self-esteem. What makes you say that? Just curious. I mean, to some extent, I get what you're saying, right? A lot of people, you know, if you're a proud individual, you might be in some sort of leadership position. Yeah, some people can't tolerate that because perhaps they're not used to that. They're not used to seeing such people in these positions. You know, of course, there are also racists out there that might feel that they are superior than you, right? So if you're in a leadership position, yeah, some people might not handle that. But I think there is quite a big difference between having a good high self-esteem and being a full-blown narcissist. You know.
Reinforcements have arrived. Reinforcements have arrived.
We got people. I want to bring people up, okay? I want to bring people up. But I've got some other things that I want to read, but I know it's kind of long. But, you know, I'll just do one as an example of what I'm talking about, how some Africans have used religion in a very self-serving way, okay? I'm just gonna just about 2 sentences. It won't be too long. I know it's a Friday night. I know how it is. You know, 4 Nigerian pastors with shocking, ungodly utterances. Okay, so pastors, you know, these are the leaders of the church, leaders of the faith, who are supposed to exhibit, you know, the text, the scriptures. You know, we've got some examples of them saying ungodly things. It even says, look, pastors are supposed to be men of God filled with grace and caution as they carry the messages from God and deliver them to the people for them to live godly lives, right? For instance, in Colossians chapter 4, verse 6 says, let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, and ye may know how ye ought to answer every man. And Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that may minister grace unto the hearers, right? So we got one example, Pastor Enoch Adeboye, right? Nigerian pastors. You know, he's respected worldwide. In 2020, a viral video hit the internet where this pastor threatened to kill anyone who messed with his wife, okay? According to him, you have heard me say it before. You can do whatever you like to me. You can criticize me. You can insult me. You can trample on me. I will only pray for you. But if you mess around with my wife, I will kill you. This is what your pastor says. I will kill you so thoroughly, you won't even be able to rise on the resurrection morning. When some people ask, how are you going to do that? I tell my daddy to send you to hell straight away. You hear that? He says, if someone asks how he's going to kill someone so thoroughly, he's going to ask God to send that person to hell straight away. I think to me that is a good example of narcissism. Via religion, so that there will be no need to come forward for judgment. Another pastor, Pastor David Ibiyeomi. Pastor David is the founder of the Salvation Ministries. Many were shocked a few days ago when the pastor lost his cool and attacked a critic. Attacked a critic. According to the pastor, I can't be alive and you insult my father. The day Daddy Freeze insults Oyedepo, I will deal with him and arrest him. Who gave birth to you? Do you have a father? Show us his picture. Oyedepo will not talk, but I can't be alive and you insult my father. I curse the day you were born. I will tear you into pieces, you bastard. He is insulting him because he has no father. You can never insult a father if you have one. Be warned. A man whose wife left him has no good job. Will be insulting my father and people will be laughing online. I will never be alive to see such and do nothing again. So insults, threats, all of that good stuff coming from our religious leaders. Okay. These are just minor examples of how I believe, yes, religion has turned a lot of Black people into narcissists. They've used the word of God. They've used God for their own endeavors. Many examples of Black pastors using God, using their congregation, using the church to enrich in their pockets. Many self-absorbed individuals using the scriptures, using the Bible to manipulate people. And that is the manipulation is the key trait of narcissistic people. Many people in the Black community who enter money are not beyond using their money to manipulate people, to have a lot of yes men and women who will prompt them up, give them the ego boost that their NPD requires. This is what goes on. And this is part of the problem. Like, again, with a lot of Black family out here who give birth to children and just don't give a damn about them. And then 20 years later, they're either wondering, where are they gone? Or why have you committed crime? Why are you emotionally deflated? We raised you in the church. Why are you now a murderer? In my opinion, part of that equation is the narcissism. It's a self-serving demeanor that I believe a lot of people who want to call themselves chosen ones and favored by God, they use this and it does a lot of harm. But anyway, I've always said I want to go away from the lecture style stuff, but very important stuff in my opinion. So again, I'm going to bring people up. We can discuss whatever you want to discuss when it comes to religion. If you believe what I'm saying is right or wrong, feel free to express yourself. Press the link in the pin to the top of the chat. We can, again, religion has damaged the cultures. Has religion made us quite ignorant? Maybe we should follow indigenous religion. All of that good stuff. Feel free to call in, hit the link. I'm going to play the link again. Sorry, I'm going to paste the link again. One sec. So there's the link. If you want to call in, just hit it and you will be up. Okay. Salute to everyone in the building. Let me quickly read a few comments as well because I don't want to leave anyone out. I see Africa Millennium in the building. Good to see you. It's been a while. Salute to you. Who else is here? Okay. Usual suspects. We're good to go. Okay. Let's go. So in order of who came, we got Billy the Goat in the building. We got JM Talks in the building. And we have Kings and Queens in the building. Salute to everyone. First up was Billy the Goat. Salute to Billy the Goat. How you been these days, man? Good to have you on a panel.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Falcon, Kings and Queens, and JM. I'm surrounded with great gentlemen here this evening. Thank you so much. It's a bit
You're
cold.
too kind. You're too kind.
You know, I know. My whole channel is built on discussing narcissism, so I have a very deep insight into what we're discussing this evening.
Right. Okay. I mean, in terms of, first of all, I guess what I'd like to ask you is, can you see a correlation between, I don't know, people who might have low self-esteem, who might, bring up this sense of a heightened self-worth to kind of hide that low self-esteem,
Yes,
and therefore become or suffer with this, because it is a disorder, right? Suffer with this NPD. Can you see a correlation?
Yeah. So there's some conceptions we need to first iron out. There is a difference between someone who is highly narcissistic and then someone who is full-blown NPD.
Okay.
But once you're really high in narcissistic traits, you may as well be NPD really at that point. There is technically 9 or so traits, and you only need about 5 of them to get a diagnosis. These traits need to be consistent pattern of behavior, because at some point, if you look at the 9 traits, you've got grandiosity or self-importance, you've got entitlement, you've got denial, lack of empathy, arrogance, must be adored, admired, praised. At some point, you're going to display one of these traits anyway. It's normal, but it's the pervasive, recurring, consistent that gets you the diagnosis. Right. Because narcissism, if you are indeed a narcissist, is a full-time occupation, as it were. You don't get any respite. It's in every second of your day. Even if you're on your own, you're still functioning with narcissistic tendencies. This idea of low self-esteem is, yes, that's how it's normally described. And as you pointed out, in compensation, there's this heightened sense of self-importance, this grandiosity. But it's not really a case of low self-esteem. It's the pushing away from the true, authentic self, or also known as the inner child. So you kind of need to sort of understand, how does someone become a narcissist in the first place? And where this originates is usually in childhood. The child is not self-aware, so they're not putting any controls on this. They're just being themselves. This is the true sense of self. This is the true child just being a child. But at a sort of critical age of becoming self-aware, they start to realize that they're not going to make it in life, in reality, being this way. Sorry, excuse me. So the child has to make a very tough decision. It's, do they continue being true to themselves, which isn't viable in reality, or do they sever the tie and become inauthentic? Do they become a performer? And this is where the development of a false ego starts to take over, the false self and the mask. The mask is to protect the false ego. So they reject the true self. They reject who they truly are. And in doing so, they reject reality. So narcissism is a disorder of delusion. It's the way of escaping the real world, and in turn of escaping who they are. So when we say low self-esteem, it's really a case of a avoidance of the true self, because self-esteem, true self-esteem, is tied to your true self. If you reject your true self, there is no way you can have true self-esteem. So what you're left with is having to produce an artificial sense of self-esteem. And this is where that inflated, if you've got the opportunity now to produce a alternate version of yourself, you would make it an idealized, perfect, omnipresent, powerful, grandiose. And that's, you can see how that feeds into the ego's sense of self-importance.
Right.
It's all fabricated. It's all built on lies. The narcissist is built on lies.
Do you ever think, and I'm going to pass it over to Kings and Queens, and if JM comes up, but I want to ask you this: that do you think religion, don't know how much you are aware of different religions, but do you think they can have in this case, a negative impact when it comes to developing, a sense of, being in line with having the disorder or being narcissistic?
It doesn't help. Yeah. So it's like a chicken and egg kind of thing. I mean, they go hand in hand. So normally there are different classifications of narcissist. That's another kind of gripe I have with articles you were reading where they just talk about narcissism as a broad brush. There are different types of narcissist. Religion falls into the communal style of narcissism. So in that sense, you don't have to be religious to have this kind of brand of narcissism. You could be a community style based member and have the same kind of trends. Like, I don't want to sort of sound too derogatory, but like, you see how you get these hysterically overly animated kind of vegans who try to ram it down your social justice warriors, I'll put it that way. Social justice warriors save the planet, save the animals, save the children, save whatever. Is basically following the same format as the religious narcissist. Someone who donates blood for the validation of being, oh, I'm so special because I'm so charity worker. That's the same kind of thing. I help the homeless. You're not really helping the homeless because you want to help the homeless. You're helping the homeless because you want a virtue. You're using the homeless so that you can feel better about yourself. So these are all communal style narcissists.
Hey, great input. It's funny you say that because one, I'm actually giving blood tomorrow morning. And two, yeah, when I think of like Western people that want to go and quote unquote help African children, and they're like, they have this kind of ambience to them when they're in that environment where it's like, I don't know, like they need some sort of attention.
Social currency.
Right. And they're taking all sorts of pictures with... Right.
Sorry. Yeah, they're kind of buying their way.
After you, bro. Sorry, there's a delay, or I'm creating awkward silence.
Oh yeah. So it comes down to discernment, because you just gave the example like you're going to be giving blood. So I'm not here saying that, oh my God, Falcon, you must be a narcissist. It doesn't quite work like that.
Of course.
It's actually a good thing, from what I understand, when it comes to blood donating. Not many Black people donate blood. So the fact that you're doing it, kudos to you, because it's very much needed. So you really are helping where it's needed there. But it's the sort of donating blood or whatever air quote charitable thing you're doing, and then kind of like rubbing it in the faces of other people. Like, look at me, look how special and great I am.
Right.
Even the victim who is oppressed is doing a similar kind of thing, because by saying like, I'm oppressed, oh, everything is just discrimination against me, woe is me, victimhood. That's another sort of aspect of the narcissism. But it's slave morality. It's, I'm such a good slave that I must be special. I'm being bullied or victimized because of my greatness. People are jealous of me because I'm too much of a threat or danger. So they put obstacles in my life, and that's why I'm a victim. Because unfortunately for the narcissist, despite with this fake facade of importance, they kind of don't meet those expectations, because the narcissist is lazy and effort. They don't want to put any effort in. So, and they're very maladaptive. They're full of BS. They're lies. It's all a facade. So they don't really have any meritocracy or legitimacy. They kind of blag their way into positions of power. They don't really have the responsibility or the accountability to actually do the job properly. So it's kind of inevitable. It's a self-defeating diagnosis that they will fall from grace and become a victim at some point. So they embrace that victim and be like, well, the reason why I failed is because of someone else's fault. You see, they transfer the responsibility. So they kind of keep giving this false promise as if like, oh, but I can do it if only everyone bends over for me and makes it easy for me to do it. But then it's like, well, you're not really doing it from your own hard work. You're doing it because people have paved the way for you, and you're just stealing the credit for it.
Okay, those are some fighting words, but Billy the Goat, we're going to open it up in the second round of discussion, okay? But great opener, and I really appreciate your insight into this very important stuff. So that's Billy the Goat in the house. Next up, we've got Kings and Queens. I think J&A might pop back on. He might be back later. If anyone else wants to join, feel free to hit the link if you got anything to express with regards to this topic, is religion turning black people into narcissists. Okay, Kings and Queens, how are you doing this evening?
I'm well. Thanks for bringing us up, Falcon. How are you?
No problem. I can't complain. It's a good end of the week. You know, can't complain. Your mic is a bit staticky. I'm not sure if it just needs to be plugged in a little bit better.
Let's move around a little bit. Is that any better?
Yeah, probably is. It probably sounds a bit better, but we can manage. It's fine.
Yeah, that's strange. Apologies for that. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let me shut some windows down.
How many windows do you have up on this front? You're a married man. Sorry, you're a married man, so I'm. You know, you're not doing anything crazy.
But Billy the Goat, good to have you. Good to have you in the conversation as well. You know, this made me feel brilliant conversation. This made me think of quite a few things actually. So number one, years ago I did a part of my MA was in cultural practice, and we looked at the world basically from a multicultural point of view. And I hate the term, but it's true, multicultural point of view, if that's the correct phraseology, if my memory serves me correctly. And an empirical point of view as well. In other words, when Europeans, even now, when they do a lot of research, they operate within this as in a central position, and then they measure other people based on what they consider to be normal. They don't even see themselves as them doing this. It's just that their position is normal, and abnormality emanates from them in concentric circles, if that makes sense, right? And that's been how they do research for a long time, still is to some small degree. The other way of doing research is recognizing that everything operates within cultural practice, and people learn to do what they do to exist in their cultural paradigm. Right, that is. There's no point learning what other people do when you don't live in their culture. It makes no sense. Literally makes no sense. But then, so that needs to be taken into account in every bit of research when you're measuring other people, unless that other group is living in your country, but then they still bring their culture with them to some small degree, even though it gets watered down. As the longer they live in another country.
Okay. That's a great point. Sorry to cut you, but I mean, let's think about a country like South Africa, right, where there is, a fairly high amount of people of European descent, right? They surely can, or they are able as citizens of the country to analyze their black fellow citizens and to see why they live in a certain way, or how they might think in a certain way in terms of from a cultural standpoint. Surely that is fair game.
You can measure anyone you want, depending wherever you want, anytime you want, including them. They can measure it, and they have been doing it since the Dutch got to South Africa. Right? As to their measures, their parameters, their tools that they use to measure, I would like to see how they measure. Let's just put it like that. But you see, the reason why this is important is because, and I did put it in the chat. You see, here's the thing, right? Africans, generally speaking, going right, and you mentioned the Egyptians quite rightly, the Nile Valley civilizations coming right the way through to us. You said that going right the way back there, Africans, ancient Egyptians have always been quite, I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing you, I think you said something like quite pious, spiritual, whatever. You see, here's the thing, black people in general, African heritage people, we measure our identity, I'm generalizing, right? We find our identity, and always have done, in God. Right, in spirituality, right, going right the way back, you can go right the way back to the earliest of African cultures, not necessarily philosophy or philosophical thinking. That doesn't mean that ancient Africans were devoid of philosophical thinking, because when you study ancient Egypt, it is full of theological thinking. But the thing is, we do not separate it from spirituality, and that key point is something that European philosophers, or from what Europeans call the Enlightenment period, that's something that they don't understand. The Enlightenment period, for those that don't know, was the separation of church and state. That's when it began, right? Prior to that, it wasn't like that in Europe. Post the Enlightenment period, they separated church and state, right? So right now, today, it's very difficult for Europeans to understand that anyone else can see their identity in a way that they do not. In other words, if I position my identity in God, and if I see myself as being inseparable from God, then that is just odd. And when I get separated from God, if I lose my purpose, lose my way, then that for a European is a symbol of a lack of identity, a lack of this, a lack of that. When for other people from the southern hemisphere, it's not just African heritage people. You can go to the Aborigines, you can go to anybody really, right? Then that is quite normal. Right, so this really needs to be understood, not just by African heritage peoples, but also by Europeans that are going to be doing the measuring. Right, it's not. They shouldn't do measuring from an empirical standpoint. They should do it from a culturally based standpoint. In other words, get in the heads of who are the people that you're measuring, and what is their cultural dynamic. What's their North Pole? What's their orientation regarding spirituality? Get into that, rather than measure it from your own point of view. Because if you measure it from your own, if I measure anybody else from where I'm standing, everyone else is going to be less than. Yeah, I'm going to be normal, and everybody else is going to be less than me because I'm in the normal. I am perfect. Right? I'm not saying it's.
This study, though, I mean, it was a US study, and they did also use as case studies Hispanics, Asian people, as well as white people to determine these things. Of course, it's just a study, and it's it's nothing that can be taken strictly. But I mean, they would argue that they use other groups to determine what they are trying to determine as well.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I haven't read the study. Thanks for reading it out. But I just want to put on that specific note of caution. Now, I think there's another question, and you definitely did touch on it. And this is, I suppose, where I am with it. When I look at African heritage peoples, for me, to what extent does religion, I know people like to use the word religion, I like to use the word faith, but if we're talking about religion, to what extent does religion hinder the economic development of a country? Right? That's for me. That's the question. So, for example, when you look at Saudi Arabia, which is not necessarily a black country, right? Forget what the roots are. What it is today is what we're really talking about, right? To what extent does religion inhibit them as an Islamic Muslim country? Or to what extent? To what extent does it inhibit Dubai? Right? To what extent, all of these oil-rich countries that have sallied up with the West, to what extent does it inhibit Kuwait, all of those countries?
Okay, that's a great point.
The only reason I'm sorry, go ahead, Falcon.
No. I just want to say that's something that we can open up in the next round because I just want to pass on. But that's a good point. But please, you can feel free to conclude what you just said.
Yeah. The only reason I bring up those countries is because they've got a different political relationship with the West, right? They've got a different political. They've had a particular enslavement relationship with African countries. Those are the Arab countries, if you know that part of history, and in terms of their raw resources, it's been way different in terms of oil, and also in terms of their history of colonialism with the West. It's different, and it's a different culture as well. It's just literally different. And so, and this is an important point as well, right? Development, history, all of those things, you got to look at it like it's a big, massive, long arc of time, history, and development of human beings, and things are things may be on the downswing, on the upswing, and we may not even see it because the arc of it is so big, you know. So yeah, I'll end it there. Yeah.
Hey, great point, Kings and Queens, that we definitely going to reconsider in the next conversation, man. But I appreciate Kings and Queens for coming up. Great opener. We've also got Diego Ife in the building, aka Diego Harry in the chat. Salute to Diego, man. How you doing this evening? Good to have you up. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know it's been a minute, man. I'm good. How you doing?
Yeah, I can't complain, man. You know, it is.
Cool.
You know, it's
Cool. Yeah, greetings.
So I know you've came up at a later point, but is there something that's pressing on your mind when it comes to religion turning black people into narcissists, or do you kind of have like a different, you know, you want to come in with a different point? Like, what's your point in general? What do you think?
Yeah, so what I would say is that, I mean, 'cause I was listening in from before, but I wasn't able to call in up until now. So yeah, and during the time I was listening, there was different thoughts that came to mind, right? I will say this much. When it comes to religion,
yeah, that pause, man. That's a pause. And listen, man, I think I want to be frank. I want to be a bit more frank with this discussion because I think it's very it's a prevailing effect that I see, and you know, I need to articulate that to like the best of intentions because yeah, there is a deep thing that I know a lot of people might not agree with. I know it's a very sensitive topic, but we have to go there if we can.
So here's what I would say, right? I think part of it is maybe nuanced when it comes to like sort of the black experience. I think part of it is like general, right? So I think the God complex, which is very prevalent in black churches or people that see themselves as Bible believing, Bible thumping, evangelical, born again, etc., right? A lot of them develop a God complex, you know. When I think of like God's word and that, right, as a Christian word, so to speak, and it speaks of it speaks of not wrestling against flesh and blood, but principalities, right? And so if your enemies are not physical but they're spiritual, why do you need to be hollering in church? And I would say that because many people don't truly have faith, in my opinion, in them, in their abilities to actually achieve something meaningful, or really in not just their own abilities, but also, I guess, making the conclusion or drawing the conclusion that I'm not an accidental being. I have a purpose. God created me. So those things combined, boom, I can do something. But the more cowardly, I hate to say it, more long-winded, inconvenient approach is to maybe, be swayed by the prosperity gospel. And a lot of black people have bought into it, like, because for them, it's almost like God becomes like their own genie in a bowl. That people try their best to manifest time and again, which is why, I mean, you see it on a cavalier basis, especially among Nigerians. God punish you. For example, right? Well, my God will avenge you.
Right.
To be honest, I'll be keeping real with you. It sounds more Luciferian than it does sound Christian. Who's my God? Why is my God different to your God? But you should. Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't think some people actually think before they speak. You understand, on certain topics. And I think when it comes to this and seeing how that sort of pans out, so many thoughts come to mind. Like I remember, I think I've said this on a few streams in the past about how Nigeria experienced like an oil boom in the 70s, which, because of the oil price, the revenue was unanticipated, and it transformed Nigeria, probably for the worse, but at the time it looked like it was propitious, right? And then less than a decade later, it found itself insolvent. And then pretty much that was consolidated with like the SAP, the sort of structural adjustment programs, in 1986. I won't go too much into what that was about. The main purpose of me referencing it was at a time where a lot of Nigerians were, I wouldn't make the contention, nominal Christians, you understand? Or should I say Sunday Christians, and secular throughout the week, right? But this was a turning point when people who thought that the oil revenue was going to transform their lives, only to see that they were without prospect in a military repressive regime, I remember a 1986 article that spoke of how the nation should pray to God for God to heal. God will take care of all the problems. Something that was man-made and
Right.
very avoidable, right? Like there was enough money. I mean, that time in history was known as like the Depression decade, right? Where there's a lot of recessions, a lot of conservatism, and Nigeria didn't have to be impacted by that. But how did it address the circumstances? It basically defaulted to, at least in quote, God, but it was prosperity gospel. So what would now happen, of course, is more and more people became swayed. That's why a lot of these, is it TB Joshua, the late TB Joshua's, I forget the name of his church. You've got your redeemed and your this and your that and your that and your this. They sprung up from that time. It was within that milieu that they came. You understand? Right. And what it was that people believed that if they sow their tithes and love gifts, then God will just give them like unadulterated riches. But then also they have to accompany that with living a sin-free life. And the problem with that is if that person is not putting in effort to actually make it in business, right? Or whatever it is, whatever prosperity they're trying to achieve, the only thing that happens is they end up spending more and more money on that church, which when you now aggregate it, could have been used incidentally, funnily enough, ironically, could have been used as business capital. But obviously they sowed in the wrong well, right? So then the problem is, it's like if you're not only committing that kind of money, but you're also trying to chase sort of like perfection, but yet perfection is unattainable. You just find yourself running mad, hopping mad, because you'll think that the passport to riches is righteousness, but the righteousness is unattainable. Even the pastor that's telling you to be righteous, so to speak, will have a harem or a harem with a concubinage. You understand? They would have that. They'd be doing all kinds of debauchery, but they'd be telling you. And keep these times, a lot of the stuff is open secret. But I honestly would say that a lot of people fear uncertainty, right? The black church, well, I hate to say the black church is too broad, but the prosperity or charismatic churches, let me say that much, right? They prey on the sensibilities of the people, but the people, I think it's symbiotic. A lot of the people, in the absence of not hammering or that kind of sanctified power move, blah, money, in the absence of that, hollering and screaming as a weekly ritual feels therapeutic. There's something cathartic about it. So in many ways, you can make the argument that the pastor is playing a role, and likewise, the congregation is too. And they're both basically deceiving each other. The only difference is the pastor is the one that's laughing to the bank. Meanwhile, the congregants are running around in circles. Do you understand? I think that
it's very symbiotic. It's very symbiotic. It's funny because from what I've read, and I'm probably not as well read as Billy the Goat in this subject, but it seems like the people who are attracted by narcissistic, especially like leaders who are, who have that grandiose appeal, it's usually agreeable, kind of, kind of almost naive people that see that as confidence. And, typically a narcissist is well-spoken. They know how to dance with their words. And people, these susceptible people just, they just bounce to it. They just enjoy hearing it, and I can really see that in the addiction to church, right? Like you got a pastor who's not, there's always from pastors that I've known, there's always some sort of rumor, and there's, and again, like Diego says, a human being is flawed. They can't attain perfection. There's going to be some chink in the armor, and people understand this, but it's as if they don't mind if there is, and even sometimes when there is an issue committed by the pastor, it's usually defended by, by the people that go to the church, So
they often cite touch not die anointed, right?
Right. But yeah, man, well put, Diego, man. I really want to open it up to make it a bit more of a free-flowing dialogue, but I want JM to have his piece as well. JM, man, how you doing this evening?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm just changing. I'm using my computer instead of my phone instead now. So
that's okay. You sound good and clear, man. Everything all good?
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm getting into self-employment now. It's been quite busy, but I pretty much know I will be successful now.
In
based
Jesus' name.
on in Jesus' name and my name.
Hey, Jim, have you been to church like regularly in the past or something?
Yeah, I was brought up. I was Christian. I was christened. I was brought up pretty much in a church environment right from secondary school right up until I was a young kid. So you kind of say I'm indoctrinated.
Right.
But
Okay.
as I got older, I started questioning a lot of things regarding religion. And to be honest, what was it? A few years ago, I can't remember when. I think it was in 2013 or maybe 2014, probably around that time. It was in my 20s, where I basically denounced Christianity. Where I said, I'm no longer Christian. And I told
Why?
everyone.
What happened, if you want to share?
Basically, because I come from, because basically a lot of Christians are just hypocrites, isn't it? And the other thing as well is that, like, for me, religion, I just feel as if it's just, as I more look into it, like, there's just certain things that are just left out. And a lot of the moral things are, let's just say, in many books and texts. Because when I was young, when I left Christianity, I was looking for another religion. And then as I moved, as I started reading the books, because I got multiple religious books in my house, right? I started realizing that every religion in certain regards, right, especially the big ones, are just screwed up as each other. So really, when they come out as like this beacon of morality, it's like it's like when I read what is in certain texts in the book, I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't really like that. And there was a time where I literally told one of my sisters who's like really, let's say, she's proper in the church, got all the Bibles, everything, goes to church on a Sunday. And I basically said, I'm no longer Christian, innit? And basically she started getting very vexed and angry with me and just saying, oh, you still true, like you still have faith in God. And I'm like, no, like I'm done. Like I don't really believe in Christianity. And the thing is like, the funny thing is there's Christians, but yet they're overweight. You know what I'm saying? And gluttony is a sin. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could go in. Like, I could go in.
There's Christians out here, content creators talking about Christianity and God, but then also talking about pumping and dumping, dumping about the roadside,
And when I also look at certain, like, and the thing is if people want to believe what they want to believe, but I'm not trying to tell them don't be a Christian, innit? But what I find very strange is some Christians, if I say I'm atheist, why is it that you can't leave me alone trying to get back into Christianity?
That's a strong point.
Or trying to get me into Islam, right? And I'm just like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. I'm happy as I am. And what I noticed is as soon as I got out of, let's say, the religious politics, I started having a more open mind, right? In terms of how I saw money, in terms of how I see people and why they're rich. Like, to be honest, I believe more in science and actual evidence of things than some God in the sky, right? And another thing I've noticed is some, like on YouTube as well, is some people start using God as a get out of jail card or basically a coping mechanism. Right? So all of a sudden, certain people.
Hey, I need to say this, man. I need to say this. Sorry, I need to jump in, and I'm gonna name names like Roosh V. Do you remember Roosh V? Because he's quite a good example of what you just said. Roosh V was this, pickup artist or dating coach, one of those two, talking about, I guess, the usual stuff. How to get girls, how to sleep around, why you should sleep around, masculinity traits, and after all of that. I'm sure profit and a lot of subscribers, he has, turned. What happened? He went to become even more religious, or he found an encounter or an awakening that made him denounce all of that, which he said. And he's a grown man. He's not like a young, impressionable boy. And it's like, yeah, stuff like that makes me just think, I don't know if I buy it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Like you're having a good time when you're having your 1,000th body count, and then all of a sudden now you want to turn to God and ask for forgiveness. That's what I can't stand, to be honest with you. And at this point, guys, it's a free flowing conversation. Feel free to jump in, but I just want to get into stuff like that because that's what I can't stand about people.
right.
Now you're living in sin, and then when it's convenient for you, oh, my faith in God and He's my strength. Like that's nonsense, man. And
Yeah, it's all crap.
that's just nonsense.
And like another guy as well, like Gideon, right? Very high profile YouTuber slash streamer called Gideon, right? He all of a sudden, when his YouTube channel was going downhill, he turned to God. But the real reason why I suspect he's done that is because he was very close to going to jail, right? And this was to do with a other YouTuber who is basically a pedophile, right? Which is a fact, by a guy called EDP445,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I've heard of him.
All of that, right? So I'm just like, sometimes I really can't take certain Christians seriously. Like, if they want to like preach what they want to preach, cool. Like, even what's going on, let's say between the people with the little hats and another land that
a foreign land,
another foreign land,
in the
right?
bank somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere over there, right? In nationwide banks, right? Basically, that there is just signs of like, oh yeah, holier than thou and everything, but bloodshed and everything. Like, I don't get me wrong, I have sympathy for all the families, and all the destruction in terms of what they're going on, like living in there. But all of that is what is going on is because of religion, right? And if you look at the history of certain religions, even our own cultures, right? Even our African culture, even from the Caribbean, was significantly affected because of religion. Right? We could be living very different lives right now if religion didn't exist, right? Now, to close, so I could, let other people speak, is that, for me, I just feel as if, even to this day, I don't know, man. Like, I think eventually, maybe in 100 years' time, religion is gonna be gone. There's already signs showing there, and there's certain countries that you can see who do not have a religious element to them as much. They're actually quite well. Like, for example, China.
Yeah, Japan, I think, is up there.
Yeah, Japan, those type of places, right? And those are countries that, in my opinion, I think are like light years ahead of many other countries of certain standards, right? So that's why I just don't really mess with Christianity like that. People go into church every Sunday giving their money away, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. But that's all I've got to say.
Great points, Jay, man, because you've aroused the spirit of I don't know if it's the Holy Spirit, but a general question to everyone on the panel, man, and at this point, feel free to jump in whenever you feel you need to. But based on what James said, is it that religion, generally speaking, is already corrupted, as in, it's a man-made endeavor or system that clearly puts certain people in a subservient position and others in a superior position, or has people corrupted religion, as in people have just twisted the quote-unquote word of God to their own, for favor, right? Particularly if we're talking about, African people or, prosperity preachers and stuff like that.
If I may throw something in here, which will be a useful lesson as well for everyone. In understanding the narcissist is inherently codependent because it's reliant on other people and it's transactional based. So it's essentially someone who's trying to siphon the life force out of you. It's a transaction. So in a kind of way, it's you must sacrifice so that they can live. In that way, the narcissist will exploit any institution, any infrastructure, any platform, any space, any rules. It's all exploited and corrupted, contaminated, in order for this transactional exchange to happen. So, if like, okay, I'll go back with religion. I'm not a very religious person, but my kind of general idea about religion is that it's supposed to help the individual navigate life better, to help them with a bit of meaning and purpose. Right. So it's meant to kind of support a person.
Right.
But where was I going to take that? But the narcissist needs, I describe it as an arena. It needs to create a place in their delusion, in their fantasy, so that you can be transported in there with them. So you become bonded and tied to the narcissist in a shared fantasy. So if you notice, whatever kind of framework is trying to pull you into a fantasy, it's trying to detach you from what you know as reality and pull you into maybe wishful thinking, like relationships. You see this, like, oh, well, let's get married, we'll have wonderful, we'll have a house and children or whatever. We'll live on the beach. You know, you're being teleported to a place that does not really exist. You're being groomed and lured. It's like taking the bait, and then you fall for the trap. So if the religion framework being presented to you is, hey, why don't you come be with us? We'll look after you. This is like cult behavior now, you know, or gang behavior. Hey, we'll be your family. We'll be your friends. We'll give you love. We'll give you everything you need. Too good to be true. All you need to do is, if you want to come to paradise and utopia with us, is you have to say goodbye to the people you know. That is a red flag. You're being triangulated. You're being isolated. You're being emotionally heightened, and you've been tantalating, you know, tickling your ears, and you're being sold a false promise, a dream.
That's religion in a nutshell.
So that's where you start to be like, whoa, what's going on here? And then the dream takes, you know, you're being usually there's a bit of momentum, because one of the enemies or obstacles to a narcissist is if you pause for thought and weigh up the pros and cons. They don't want you to do any critical thinking.
But here's the thing, though: if you're meant to follow a text, how is that? That's not really promoting independent or critical thinking, right? Like here is the book, here is the word. This is what you should believe. If you believe anything else, you are probably a sinner. You are blasphemous.
Look for where the transaction. Where's the catch? Read the small print. What is it they want from me? Is it blind obedience? Well, then you should be concerned and worried, because what are they going to ask you to do next? And it starts with it's like moving the goalposts. It starts, give them an inch, they take a mile. So at first you might be like, it doesn't seem too bad. They seem all right. They allow me to have freedoms. But little do you realize at the time, they're only doing that as part of this manipulation, so that they go, it's insidious, so that it's unsuspecting. They erode boundaries slowly and gradually.
From how you say it, it sounds like elements of narcissism is intertwined with religion. That's what it sounds like to me. It's like I can't really separate the two.
They are very closely related, but put it in the framework of a communal narcissist. So religion has been around for a long time and is well sort of known, and people, you know, fall into it. But the saving grace is, or the distinction is, whether or not you're allowed to have your individualism. If you are, you're probably okay-ish. You know, I'm not saying, you know, don't ever be attentive to what's happening around you, but narcissism doesn't want you to be an individual. It wants you to be an extension of the narcissist. You cease as a person. You don't exist as an actualized man anymore. You belong as property to the narcissist. If religion is doing this to you, be concerned.
I want to great points, Billy, man, great points. I want to ask other members as well, like with what Billy just said, does that not sound like the tip? And I hate to say it like this, but you know, the black family. Let me just be frank. Parents, Like, you know, you can't be your own individual self. You're an extension of my glory and greatness. You know, be a doctor, be an architect because I said so. I don't care about your own particular individual expertise. Is this narcissism, quote unquote, not a feature in some black households?
Well, if I may, again, you know, to me anyway, you know, we're talking about cultural practice because obviously, you know, if we're talking about, if you like, older black families, then we're going to have parents that are going to say, well, you know, my job is to train you to bring religion into it or faith, right? My job is to train you in the way that you should go so that you should not depart from it. And do not spare the rod and spoil the child, right? But even how those scriptures are worked out in a family depends on you know how old your mum and dad is, basically. I mean, if your parents are westernized, i.e. were born in London in the UK, then they're probably not going to beat their kids, right? But if your parents are my mum's generation, then you're going to beat your kids. It's as simple as that. You're going to beat your kids, and you're going to do it not for your benefit. You're going to do it for your kids' benefit. You're doing it for them to help them, right?
Do you agree with that train of thought that beatings are going to help the kids to straighten up in life?
What I think, right, is that it may have worked once upon a time, maybe in a different country, right? But in England today, right, I don't think it necessarily works in 2023. Did it work in 1974? Maybe, you know, but does it work in 2023? Well, not if your kids' friends hang about with a load of kids who you know, that they got a different the culture's different. It's just, you know, the environment is different. So it's really difficult to compare. You know, it's dangerous to compare the two. In my personal opinion, you know, I mean, does it work in Jamaica 1979? Maybe it works in Jamaica 1989.
How do you decipher work? Because I mean, we can go back. Let's go to the Benin Kingdom in 1897. Any historians in the building might know what happened in 1897 in Benin Kingdom. I mean, that style of, we can assume that the parents were using physical violence on their kids. I mean, can we say it worked for pre-colonial African kingdoms with how things went?
Okay, so what I mean by work is, does it keep your children from touching the third rail? What I mean by the third rail is getting themselves into trouble when they leave the house. When they leave the house, are your words ringing in their ears to keep them out of trouble? If you've got a community, not that we have, when your parents' friends see you mucking about on the street, right? What's their reaction? Can they beat you? Can they tell your parents? What are the controls? I'm going to use the word control, even though I know it's not fashionable in 2023 in the UK. But what are the inner controls that you have as a child? What are they? And do we build those inner controls in the same way, right? Because the idea is, by the time you're 18, you must have inner self-control, right? But how that's developed, do we develop it the same way today as we did 20, 30 years ago? The answer is no, right? Not, especially not in the UK, right? You would hope, I use the word hope, that you can talk to your kids and develop those and show them love and understanding and care and parenting and fathering and mothering and all those kind of things. You would hope that you could do it that way, right? So, you know, that's what you would hope. Right? You know what I mean? But I wouldn't.
In my personal opinion, I think if parents need to hope that they can communicate with their child, then they don't have the equipment to be parents. In my opinion,
I'm not necessarily saying. I'm not necessarily. Go ahead.
It is. I mean, I've done courses on upbringing kids. You know. So beating children is kind of like a last resort desperation. It's a sign of like poor parenting skills. It's like, I don't know how to teach you properly. The only way I know how is just to beat some sense into you. But the kid doesn't really learn any sense, because all the kid knows is a formula of like, if I do this, I get punished. There's no discretion where it's like an understanding of what they did wrong. That's the problem. So narcissists are renowned as terrible parents. They're crap because they don't care about, well, one, they don't care about their kids. Two, they don't have any actual skills to be a parent. So it's no surprise a narcissist, in context of this conversation, would end up beating their kid into compliance without even explaining why exactly. That's another nasty little trick the narcissist does. It's ambiguous in order to make the target or the victim, even their children, walk on eggshells.
Right, exactly. So in many instances, kids that get beaten by their parents and they're never told why or what was wrong or what exactly. It's just threat and abuse.
Right. So the kid learns to self-police. The kid learns to throttle themselves and keep themselves in check, not in the sense that you're talking, King and Queen, of like self-control, discipline, good for you, but in terms of like a terrorized version of, I have no idea if I'm going to get in trouble. I better tread carefully, and I better put my parents. The kid becomes parentalized. The kid becomes responsible for keeping the parents happy, and they have no idea how to really do that.
Yeah, I'm going to make an assumption. We're talking about our cultural where we're living now, and we're couching this conversation in our place and space today. Do you get what I mean? And that we're not transferring our ways of being in our cultural place and space, and we're not superimposing that on other times, cultures, and places and spaces. For me, that's really important.
I guess there's a vagueness with that because our parents come from another time, but
yes,
there is a legacy. There are other parents from other cultures. I know you don't want to compare, but when we're talking about what works, and we can clearly see that, unfortunately, one group is probably not working as well as other groups, then we could probably conclude that there are traits or there are characteristics, events that might not be conducive or even good.
Yeah, what I would definitely say is you've got good parenting within a culture and what's considered to be bad parenting. I would definitely say that. And in terms of what works, we're talking about young people that are able to exist and what's the good word? Not just exist, but are able to, what's the good word to use? Prosper, move forward. All of those form good relationships within the place and space and cultural environment that they were born into. That's. Do you get what I mean? So as long as the young people can do that, then I think that's my picture of what works.
On the whole, in your opinion, kings and queens, from what you see today in our, just whatever we want to call our black community in Britain, but do you think that on a grand scale, and I know it's going to be very anecdotal, we can't ask every black person this or that, but generally speaking, is it working? And using your examples of, relationship building, understanding how to communicate effectively or to be rid of anxiety, do you think that, our space in the present day is working, quote unquote?
My view is that we live in a Western European country. We're by and large, if we're talking about the black or various of what's considered to be or the vestiges of what's left of whatever black community there is in the UK, right? Then my general answer is no, simply because fathers are not allowed to father. Right, it's as simple as that. So if you've got one sex, right, that is not allowed to do their job, then those kids are basically going to grow up maladjusted at best. If you've got a whole heap of single parents that is seen as a community, right, and then you just got the men revolving around on the periphery, right, as either surrogate dads or whatever, I don't know, whatever you want, baby daddies or whatever the hell you want to call them, right. Then you're going to grow up with maladjusted kids. There's no way any child can be well-adjusted. Not to my mind, no. Not with what I know about what fathers bring to a situation. And academically, it's fathers that cause academic attainment. That's evidence-based. right? So, you know, the mentoring, the role modeling. So you're going to end up with maladjusted kids. Even just holding your child's hand walking down the street, you know, is basically frowned upon as if it's seen as being not needed from a father. It's ridiculous when there's evidence to prove different.
A small point to add to King's argument here is to have a well-adjusted children, you need stability. So if everything is in fluctuation and the kid doesn't know what house they're living at and who's coming in and out of the building and things, the home, and the environment is changing all around them, they have nothing stable to ground themselves in.
Absolutely.
Another trigger, as it were, in the child's development that can bring about narcissism is you could have the most wonderful parents, both parents, but if the school, for example, is a totally different, I was going to say dichotomy, but a different kind of treatment,
right,
that can bring about this split. Narcissism is cognitive dissonance on steroids. It's the great dissonance. It's two lives. The child is being torn apart, and in its place is where the narcissism grows, sprouts out. So that's why also, like, if you've got two parents and one is being nice to you but the other one is very mean and abusive, that could cause a problem for the kid, because the kid is like, who am I supposed to be? I don't know who am I supposed to be treated like filth and abused, or am I supposed to be treated nicely? I don't know, you know. So you see this sort of schism take place, and in some ways it can appear a little bit like a schizophrenic, because the child starts to develop two personalities. It splits the true self and creates a false self, living two lives at the same time.
Yeah, Falcon, just getting back to your original question about I think you were saying, talking about religion, and you know, it's I think you were saying, I think the original question was, is religion the cause of what did you say, maladjustment, narcissism, and such and so forth?
Yeah, that's the general kind of topic. Is religion? It sounds ignorant, but you know, it has to be like that. Is religion turning black people into narcissists? And piggybacking on what you said as well, Kings and Queens, you mentioned that, you know, like I said in my opener, that we African people were generally known as being pious, being very spiritual, very religious. You know, often a lot of spiritual movements come from these areas. Maybe it's from like a desert, areas where you need to, you know, the inner reflection, self-reflection, stuff like that. But I want to also ask this, just to throw it into the pot. Like, it's okay, that's good, but has any of that spirituality, I can't speak, any of that piousness, has it done a net positive to Africans and people of African descent? Or has there been, you know, instances of negativity? I don't know what that could be. It could be tribal conflicts or jihad or you know, what's that, genocidal tendencies, you know.
Okay, so oh yeah, so this is what I was going to say in relation to what you just said. You see, there's, as far as I'm concerned, right, you know, I'm a Christian, I'm not a Muslim, I'm not a Buddhist, nothing like that, and I have no issue with anything anybody wants to be, you know, one way or the other. I really don't, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with any of these books, or, you know, any religion or spirituality or faith.
You reminded me. Yeah, I asked about who's corrupt, if it's the religion or the people, the personalities that are.
That was it, right? Yeah. I don't. It's not the faith or the religion or spirituality. It's people. Right? Well, why do I say that? Because people have free choice. It's as simple as that. You see, 1 minute, right? Somebody can do something really good 1 minute, and the very next minute they could do something terrible, right? You know, that's what it is to be a human being. You know, man or woman, you could do something really good 1 minute, and the very next minute you could do something terrible. But the book that you read is the same. It's as simple as that. The book you read is the same, unless you are. So, for example, you've got, and this is just an example. I'm not because I don't necessarily want to take the book in the conversation in this direction. It's just an example. So you've got a lot of women Christian feminists who would choose to read the Bible in a different way. In other words, there's some scripture that they completely ignore in favor of other scripture. And it's as simple as that. You've got, you got gay people. They choose to read the Bible in a certain way. They have their own churches. It's literally, you got the KKK who used to burn crosses. They used to have their own churches, and they still do probably today. They've made a choice to read the Bible in the way that they want to read it. This is why there's a scripture in the Bible that says a man's culture is enmity to God. What that means is God isn't for it. Whatever you're into, God wants you to have His culture, not your own. Because your culture can take you up, can lead you up the garden path. It's as simple as that, right? That's what it says in the Bible, right?
With that being said, though, but the thing is, I hear what you're saying, but there's clearly a chain of order in the Bible and what culture you are to follow. And in the Bible, for example, it's the small, it's a different culture. You have to, Hebrewic based culture, right? In Islam, it's Arab based culture. So, is that the culture of God? Is that the culture of the first people who decided to create this religion?
Okay, so here's what I believe for myself, right? God has got many different names in many different cultures. God's got many different names. The bottom line for me is this, right? What God wants, if one believes that there is, call it what you want, supreme being, creator, I know a lot of people like to use different words, and I don't have an issue with that at all, right? But what I think is this, right? The supreme being, creator, God, whatever you're happiest to word to use, right? Wants to basically, it is for me, literally got a mind, a living God, right? What that means is that the creator, whatever somebody wants to call it, right, basically wants to have some sort of relationship with you. Over the years in different countries, basically the idea is he's just trying to talk to different people in the way that they can hear it. Does that make sense? So that's the way I see it. That's the way I've always seen it, right? And it's up to you. And here's the difference between a cult and any spirituality, right? You see, a cult doesn't give you free choice, right? You've got free choice to do what you want. You can come this way or you can not come this way. It's your choice. You've got a choice. What a cult does is say there's one way, do this. Do this. This is and I think you said it earlier on. There's no, you can't think. Don't think. Don't use your brain. When basically, what the scripture wants you to do is basically sit down and debate with your friends. Basically, talk about the scripture with your friends. It's as simple as that. But a cult says, do this, don't think, do this, shut up, and just do this. And so what most people talk about when they talk about, I don't know Islam, but most, if you call it organized religion-based spiritualities, what they're really talking about is not the written word. They're talking about the people. Right. In other words, he did this when I went over there. They treated me like this, and I didn't like the way they did that. When you really listen to people, that is what they talk about, and they say they're not really Christian. They're pretend Muslims. They're not doing it right. But they're talking about imperfect people. They're always talking about the imperfect people. The people did this. I didn't like the way they did it. They did it right. I didn't like. They treated me like that. I didn't like it. The pastor slept with 50 women in the church. He's not really following that. And they're not wrong, right? But you got to understand that there is no human on earth, from pastor, church, imam. These are just imperfect people that are always going to do something wrong. Always.
That's a fair point. And I want to say something. Anyone can chime in as well, but we have to talk about slavery, I guess, because linked to Africa and in many instances, like most of us have read in the Quran, in the Bible, it promotes slavery. I don't know now. I don't know if that is something that a person wrote as just their belief of the order of how things should go, or if that is just the quote unquote word of God written in these books, right? And as people who come from or who are originate from a continent that has been heavily affected by slave trades, the question is, I can't say how I want to say it, but surely this institutionalized imposed inferiority is something that should tell us that the so-called word of God is not good. It's hard to say what I want to say because I need to hold back a little bit. But if slavery is it good? Is slavery good? If it's written in the Bible and it's the so-called word of God, is that good?
I don't get. I'll say no. It wasn't good.
So then, can we off of that, from that answer, can we just straight up say that, yeah, the what's written in these religious texts are not objectively good?
For me, I'll say no. There's even talks about women being sex slaves in the Bible, a whole bunch of other stuff. In certain religions, the religion of, let's say the explosive religion, right?
Uh-oh.
So basically that religion there, has multiple accounts of, let's say, dealing with someone underage, right? And having, let's say, certain people underage and having them as slaves as well, right? So there was a lot of immorality going on, but then also there was some good, as Kings and Queens said. So in that context, in regards of there's really good and bad, right? It's not all good and it's not all bad, but
surely the word of God should be all good and it should always have a positive effect on the human being's life.
I 100% agree, and this is one of the reasons why, let's say, I'm not particularly religious, right? Because whenever I think of a religion, I think of it as a sense of morality and something to basically follow by, right? To basically give you, let's say, the optimal or best way of guidance, right? That's how I see religion. It can be different for others, right? And another thing as well is when I really live life and I see unfortunate things happen to them, right? And they're high, they're very into God or so on and so forth. I just think, like, if they were truly protected, why did these bad things happen to them? Right? That's another thing that I also look at, and that kind of creates a sense of narcissism. For example, my parents, they would always, like, one parent would say to me all the time, "Oh, your family is protected by God," and yada yada yada. When I really look at the grand scheme of things, our family as a whole, all we've been doing is good, and we know how to stay out of danger. Right? So was it God or was it our actual, let's say, our own actions and, let's say, tactical positioning? Right? Another thing as well I would say is sometimes just the thing is some people are just unlucky. Right? I would say in a lot of periods in my life I've been very unlucky, right? I would also say that I've had one family member who is, let's say, of God, who got stabbed, right? But where was his protection? This is what I really look at. And then the only time I would really say where I'll say, okay, I believe in Christianity, right? And I'll say, okay, this is something that exists and makes sense, is when God physically comes on this earth. And I know when that happens, that's the end. So it's like a catch-22. It's like, okay, I'll believe when I see it. Right?
Okay, I'm going to give you a rebuttal though. It's usually a rebuttal that a lot of, or some religious people will say, okay, a basic example, in our body, we got a digestive system, we got all these systems in our body that appear to be carefully crafted, it's very hard to say that these things were randomized, there's a system in place in the world, there is day to night, right? There is planets are revolving supposedly around the sun. We have all this order and balance.
Okay.
Surely that is an example of a creator, isn't
Possibly, but
it?
that can be also a creation of science and
Mm.
biology, right? Another thing as well is, if let's say the human race is the race from God, what happens when a UFO turns up? What happens when a creature from another planet, right, comes on planet Earth physically, right, and we find out they're another species? What God do they worship? Like, what God are they from, right?
Mm.
Or do they even have a God? And then if that ever did happen, where an actual, let's say, extraterrestrial UFO comes on planet Earth and say, yeah, what's good, that blows everything out of the equation, because then that asks some serious questions regarding us as a human race. When you hear things like, and let's be real, everyone, I don't know if everyone thinks this, but there's no way the human race could be the only race that exists in space. There's gotta be more than one, but we just haven't come across it. Maybe we're too far away from them. Maybe they're in hiding. Maybe our eyes can't see them. You know what I mean? Like things like this, right? So that's really, let's say, my counter argument to that is,
Do you
if there
think,
was,
in your
yeah, go on.
opinion, do you think religion, I'm going to say in a very simpleton way, I think it's good to just be very basic with it. Like, do you think religion has made black people, I mean, we can always say other people, but I'm talking specifically for black people, Africans, do you think it's made us ignorant and stupid in the sense that we want to believe in things that are, it's not, as in, most African countries have massive problems and struggle. And a lot of the solutions to these problems might be, digging deep into scientific endeavors. I don't know. Maybe you can turn the Sahara into a green, lush savanna or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, is religion taking away the potential to actually be fully versed on this planet and fully versed in what will actually improve the situation for many people of this descent?
I'll say, yeah. I wouldn't even just go as far as Africa. I'll say the whole world. I think religion has held us back significantly in terms of the advancements of civilization, right? Because when you really look at the grand scheme of things, what is probably, well, I could be wrong, this is a very simpleton way of saying things, right? Is, what are the things that are actually advancing, let's say, the human race, right? You would probably say science and technology, right? Probably those two things. There may be other things that, you can get involved, like biology, so on and so forth, but those are probably the three things that you would say would advance planet Earth. Now, if I took a religion away and Africa was just Africa the way Africa was, right? Africa right now would be a superpower, right? That no other country, no other continent probably would be able to compete with, because Africa has, literally, if they wanted to, they could hold a whole world at ransom, considering the amount of mineral wealth that they could probably basically use, and also regarding the resources that they have, right? But we also got to take into consideration religion is Africa is a heavy religious continent, right?
It's funny though when you think about it, because like the major kind of colonizers or kind of suppressors of Africa were religious groups,
Exactly.
mainly Arab people and European people, right? And they took advantage of the natural wealth, right? So yeah, it's an odd one, because
Right.
one could argue that it was the religion and the faith that drove people to journey this far, and with great conviction to obviously plunder and to take resources, but to also we can always assume that people just don't have good intentions, but in some cases people seem, at least on the surface, to want to actually convert people, bring more people into their faith, so they have more allies literally in terms of warfare and stuff like that. You could argue if religion really is what gave the spark to make people have these, kind of progressive endeavors in terms of traveling around the world and trying to, convert people, make people believe what they believe.
Right. And if you look at almost, not all, but I'll say almost every Abrahamic religion, right? Those religions were literally done by the sword. Right? People were forced to be of whatever religion that they wanted to be in those historic times. Right? A lot of Africa, was, let's say, colonized, conquered, pillaged by Abrahamic religions. Right? So you can look at that extent. And the thing is if religion is meant to be the bastion, or let's say the way of morality,
right?
Why did those people have to suffer?
Uh-oh.
Right? Why did you have to kill those people? Why did you have to take them as slaves? Right? Why did you have to do? And this is just in the world globally, right? This may might give you an idea. Like, for example, I think, is it the Philippines? I don't know if it was basically the Philippines. They were basically like, another interesting thing is there's a lot of black people that have an affinity with Philippines, right? And what I found out about the Philippines is the Philippines didn't have any I don't think, I could be wrong, so anyone could correct me in the chat or on this panel, right?
Well, JM, I'm half Filipino.
Huh?
I'm half Filipino.
Oh, perfect. So
there
you
we
can
go.
correct me if I'm wrong, right? That they don't have any history of enslaving black people. I could be wrong, right? I don't know if any goat can.
It's funny you talk about Philippines. From what I know, I could be wrong as well, but the Aborigines of Philippines were the Eta people. They were quote unquote negritos, short black people, apparently.
Right. So,
who may have been displaced, but hey, we don't know that history like that.
Yeah. So that's just really an observation as well. For me, religion it just is what it is. You have your good aspects and your bad aspects. For me, I could never see myself ever being of any religion, point blank period. I think the world has, let's say, advanced to the point where, you have globalization, the molding of cultures now, and I think eventually religion is not going to be a thing in a few hundred years, because it's eroding. It's slowly eroding. People are questioning it more than they ever have had before. There's people of different religions leaving their country to come to a different country, so they're not of that religion, right? All these type of things is basically going on, right? And it seems to be accelerating at a certain rate. There's certain religions saying that they're the fastest growing religion, even though that's not true. It's a whole bunch of stuff.
The strangest thing, it seems, on paper at least, the happiest, most peaceful countries are becoming more atheists.
Yep.
Like the Scandinavian countries becoming more atheists. Well, we can argue that, they're becoming more atheists, but then the so-called natural order is deteriorating. The family life and stuff is deteriorating, and blue hair, pink hair. But
there's a little tangent I'll just throw in there. Just
sure.
I would argue we might be becoming more tribalistic. Whether or not that's sort of tied in with religion, I don't know. But
yeah, I can see that. Private. Sorry, I thought someone was saying. But yeah, I guess a general question, man. Should black people, again, black focus, should black people relinquish religion, spirit? I can't say that word tonight, but should black people relinquish religion? Like, would it do people good if they just let go of religion and just like kind of deal with the world in a very kind of physical manner, And again, from the example that I use in the opener, for example, I might have an older person in my family who might say, don't worry about that problem. God will fix it. As in, basically, what it means to me when someone says that. I'm not going to do anything about the problem, the issues that you've raised. It's going to be like that. I'm going to physically not do anything about it. But God, at some point in time, will interject his good faith and just provide a solution without any work. You know, I mainly mean that type of mentality. Like, would we be good without it? And, you know, and would perhaps be a bit more in this realm and a bit more proactive with solving issues?
So from my perspective, I don't necessarily think religion is the issue, to be honest. I think it's more to do with countries, like their institutions, how functional they are. Yeah. And if we're talking in the case of Black people, right, and given that, you know, obviously this is sort of Black UK focused,
yeah,
and we also know that most of the Black UK population is now African, it's instructive that we come, in most cases, from broken countries that are not only designed to be dysfunctional, but other things equal will remain dysfunctional. And I think that's really the main issue, because, you know, I mentioned the case in Nigeria that when, you know, before the economy tanked, you didn't have this whole kind of charismatic movement. It didn't grow. Do you understand? It's in tandem with failure of government. I think that's really the issue, because, again, you know, see, like the flow of Islam, the flow of religion in different parts of Africa. You know, I mean, there's different nuances, and there's, you know, like sort of residual impacts. I mean, it's a difficult one. Ultimately, I would say that, you know, I think someone said something earlier. I think it was maybe JM talks about, you know, people feeling offended when they try to, you know, you may tell them that you're an atheist, for example, and they almost feel like a personal attack. I mean, the reason for that is because their faith is perhaps on life support. It's tenuous. So for them, it's only natural that if someone rejects them, then they're going to feel offended, because the more people that accept the message, whether the message is cogent or not, it strengthens their faith. So you're out, so you're out here looking for other people to validate your faith, and when that doesn't happen, it will hurt. You look at a lot of people who were like that. They didn't come from backgrounds where they may have been the most charismatic, or they may have been, you know, kind of popular, or may have not necessarily been validated. And upon coming, you know, across religion and really buying into it, the religion now gives them an opportunity to maybe come out of their shell. And they're after validation in whichever form. Typically, a lot of the people that tend to find out or do that stuff, whether it's Christians or whether it's Muslims that do it, tend to be people that might have a little status, you know, kind of like maybe local champions, like little status within their small religious communities. And so they obviously become ambitious, and it's met with resistance. When met with resistance, they get upset. The reality is, obviously, money at the end of the day is fiat currency.
Right.
So let's just say someone in their mind has told themselves that their sowing of seeds and tithes has culminated in this bountiful harvest. If the dollar, I'm just using it as an example, now tanks, then their purchasing power plummets as well. So has, you know, GC my point. It's ultimately, it comes down to sort of failed societies and looking for some way to contend with it. In some ways, as dysfunctional as a country like Nigeria is, in some weird, twisted way, the absence of organized, let's just say that charismatic kind of church. In fact, to be honest, I say all like the church denominations, right? Then it'll probably be worse, because people will be hopeless. That's when shit gets really elemental, and people don't care. Yeah, and society will fully collapse. So you will know, it will be felt at that point. You know, so I think it's too complex to say should they get rid of it, should they not? Because even in the book I've written, I've spoken about the four main groups, for example, that most New Worlders descend from. Right, I isolated them, and I spoke about their myths and origins and their concepts of religion and faith for a particular reason. It was to underline the differences and the diversity among, you know, these Africans. So not all Africans have the same needs or answers. They may not live in the same climates. They may not have to contend with the same issues, for example. So there is no panacea. I mean, I've used that word a few times in past streams, but there is no panacea for whether to abandon or to keep religion. The other thing as well was that even if you're not going to have like Abrahamic faiths present, for example, right? What would be the value system that would come into place? Because they say that nature abhors a vacuum. And I'll say that with the, effect of globalization and the internet, more people have become decadent, especially from these societies, especially many of them that are very westernized, very Americanized, right? Nigeria is a very instructive case of that. A lot of people try to become vicariously American, vicariously Western. And so, well, it hasn't given them answers because they're not in the West. They can try to be in the West of the mind, but in their immediate environs and surroundings, they're clearly not there.
Right.
The religion, they transfer over to a new religion, the religion of TikTok, where the value is likes and subscribers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Celebrity, I would say as well that some people treat their own concept of blackness as a religion. What I mean by that is so-called hoteps, for example, right? Some of these people that, have to wake up and tweet about blackness and black and a black, blackity black, yeah? A lot of them, it's a religion. That is their religion. Even if some may profess to be of another faith, that's effectively their religion. You understand?
Great points, man. Especially on that hope, on the hope part. That's a great point that we didn't reach. Like, would countries who are struggling economically, if they didn't have the, obviously I don't say this offensively, but the opium of religion, then what will be, what are they looking forward to? Would it just be a rope and a noose?
This might be a topic for another day, but you're touching on addiction. So we're becoming a society or a culture that is highly addictive, and like the opium or hopium. And look at like the increase in pornography and other sort of addictive behaviors. And the thing is, to tie it back to the narcissism is very addictive. And if you're a target of a narcissist, they will induce an addictive quality in you. They kind of tap into you're already predisposed to having addictive tendencies, and a narcissist tries to tap into that so that you won't abandon the narcissist. So we're increasingly becoming a dysfunctional society of people who are like codependent, narcissistic, addictive, poor coping strategies. And when there's such a destabilization in the world, no matter how good your integrity is, if you wanted to really terrorize someone, all you need to you just need to make their world upside down, spin their head round, and they will have to fall back on whatever narcissistic defenses they've got in order to survive. Because as much as we might not like narcissism, it is actually needed to some extent. It is part of our defense systems. When all else fails, it's kind of like the last resort. When you can't cope with the world anymore, you will naturally fall back into narcissistic behaviors just to survive.
Right.
Falcon, in answer to your question, I do think certain forms of religious practice need to disappear. In fact, personally, I think, so for example, prosperity churches need to disappear, right? Because it serves no purpose whatsoever, right? And there needs to be more of an outward working of faith and spirituality, if you like, and not just dealing with what we call the inner man, right? In other words, I'm just going to make I'm going to make my inner world perfect and just wait until I die, basically, right?
Right, exactly.
That simply serves that way. That's an old. I don't know about Islam. I know nothing about any other spiritual base at all. Right, I can only speak about my own. Right, that's an old Pentecostal way of doing faith. Right, and basically, it is useless for economic and social. Sorry, not social. It's useless for economic development. You have to be really clear about the words, right? What we need, in my opinion, is more of a black liberation theology. That's what we need, right? That's just my personal opinion. So you're talking about churches like Jeremiah Wright and places like that, and specifically Jeremiah Wright more than any other type of liberation theology, simply because
we need to become atheists. That's what we need to become.
Uh-oh.
Go away with religion. Religion does not help black people from.
So what I was saying was, so the reason why I say that is because he was more about business. You see, for me, right, you can be anything you want, right? Anything you want. Now, to be honest, I don't even really care, right? Because as Malcolm X said, he said in his Ballot or the Bullet speech, he said, you know, you can be whatever you want. Doesn't really matter behind closed doors. But when we come out here, right, we've got to talk a common language because obviously, you know, not everyone's always going to be different. You're never going to get everybody singing from the same hymn sheet. Excuse the pun, right? But in terms of what causes development, economic development, what I'm bothered about is economic development for black people. I'm going to be really honest with you. That is what I'm bothered about. I'm not, and so we got to think. I believe anyway. We've got to think about what causes that, and it's not an inward. It's not purely an inward spiritual base. I mean, that's great. I think you need it, but don't think that's going to cause material development, because it won't. Right? Not on its own. Not on its own anyway. Not on its own. And that specific point is something that Black Caribbean, the older Black Caribbean churches completely missed. And the other end, the other extreme, are people like Reverend Ike. I don't know if you've heard of Reverend Ike. He's dead now, but he was probably the first prosperity church in New York City. Probably the first one. You can look at him on YouTube. But it's ridiculous, basically.
You're doing crazy tap dances and spinning on the spot and stuff like that.
No, you get that in all black churches. Right? That's just what it is to be of African descent. No, I'm more talking about lying to the people in the pews, basically around when it comes to money and presenting a money image and getting them to give you money, and that is the view that most non-Christians have of the black church, that you've got some thief up there and he's basically fooling everyone to give him money. No, that's not the majority of churches, but I understand it. For example, my older brother, he had this thing whereby he was always going on, the pastor take the money, you take the money and go and run, you know, you buy a big house and a big car, and everybody else, you know, just lives walks to church, right? Yeah. And so it's just nonsense, right? So I said to him, I had to break it down to him. So I said to him, should a pastor earn, because he was a bus driver, should a pastor earn if he does it full time and he's got a wife and kids, should he earn what you earn as a bus driver? My brother had to stop and think, and he said, well, yeah, well, I suppose so. Right? Okay. And you know, so you have to walk people through these things. Do you know what I mean? If he's got a wife and kids and he does it full time, should he basically live like you, or just live in a post box?
Can I say something?
Okay, yeah, sure. Jump in.
So here's the thing: the happiest country in the world is Finland. All the countries are atheist countries. Are the happiest countries in the world. Yeah, look. I'm Jamaican. Yeah, look at Jamaica. It's one of the. It has so much. It has Rasta. It has Christianity. Islam is taking everything, and you look there. If you go to Jamaica, they kidnap you probably. Yeah, right. Unless you know people in Jamaica, they'll literally strip you of your clothes naked. Literally, right? So unless you know people who are bad boys, who are gangsters, who are whatever, yeah. And this is a country that has the most, and we can then look at also America. You look at the UK; it's got trouble with knife crime. How many religions are there? Right?
Are you correlating high religiosity with crime, or I'm not following? Sorry.
Okay, right. We don't even have to look at Finland, who's one happiest country in the world 6 years in a row. Yeah. Okay. Switzerland, you can leave your door open and no one goes into your home, right? When was the last time you heard a Swiss man told you about Christianity or any other religion? They don't.
Never met a Swiss person, I think.
No. You would have come across Swiss people, especially if you work in the white collar job. But I'm just trying to say that these people never tell you about religion. A Finnish man never tells you about religion, right? A Swedish man, a Swedish woman never tell you about. You never hear about Christianity or any other religion, right? But yeah. Like
Are you saying basically African descended people countries should follow that example of a Scandinavia, of a Switzerland? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying, the happiest countries in the world, I'm saying, are atheist countries, yeah? So Christianity country and Islam are all right to crime except for Dubai and Arab Emirates, those type of countries, right?
You know, there's a relatively in these happy Scandinavian countries. Do you know there's a relatively higher suicidal rate per capita?
What you're talking about, the atheist countries?
In some of these Scandinavian countries, like I've been to most of them. There's a high alcoholism, drug use.
But that's irrelevant. The suicidism doesn't matter. I'll tell you why.
No, but if we're talking about happiness, of course that's relevant because someone who is happy would not kill themselves, right?
Yeah, but all right, let's go on to that then. Is it higher than in the UK? No. Is it higher than the US? No. Per capita? No. So again, atheism doesn't help you because even if you say that they have suicidism, the suicide doesn't help you because
let's call it unalive. My bad. Let's call it unalive.
Well, unliving. Well, there's more people in the UK, yeah. You know, I think it was last month. I was riding by actually to do an exam, and this woman. I was going over was it the Waterloo Bridge? And this woman said that if you don't give me my daughter, she was on the thing to jump. Yeah, 3 women were trying to stop her. Yeah, I was riding on my bike, and she's saying that if you don't get me through to my daughter, I'm going to commit suicide.
Unalive, brother. Come on.
No, literally on the bridge. No word of a lie.
No. You know I'm just saying, don't say the S word so much because the algorithm is going to pick it up.
Okay, yeah. So no, seriously, and this is what I'm saying. This is a country that you've got so much Christianity, you've got Islam, you've got all sorts, yeah, right. And all the countries, this country's got so much churches, mosques galore, yeah. And look at the crime rate. You've got a problem of knife crime, right? Whereas in these other countries, you don't have knife crime as such, you don't have gun crime, and the people are happy. In Switzerland, like I told you, you can leave your door open.
Can you see the map on the screen? This is suicide rates per 100,000 people in Europe, 2019.
Yeah, go ahead.
Typically, Norway, 11.8, Sweden, 12.4, Finland, 13.4, Iceland, 11.2.
What about the UK?
UK, 6.9.
Okay, so it's got 6. Here's the thing, and why I don't suicide is generally it happens because it's not happiness. I'll tell you why. Because it's like a man gets involved with a woman or something, and he finds out she's cheating, and so then he might feel like he want to commit suicide. You understand me? It's not.
That's a good example because one might argue that. I just want to respond to that. One might argue that if you are in the within religion and you are shamed for things like adultery and stuff like that might be an extra chain to not want to go that route. But someone could argue that in a country where there's limited or less belief in God or faith, that is more probably a situation that could happen. I'm obviously not saying people that don't believe in God are less moral, but I mean some people can argue that. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I understand why you say that, but they measure the happiness because this is how the statistics is done. This includes the UN, yeah. So they ask these countries what they think of their government, their housing ish thing. Yeah, in Finland, for example, the reason why it's won 6 years in a row is because their benefits pay a lot of money, right? So therefore, it creates a more happy, yeah. Surrounding Germany pay very high rates of benefits as well. Yeah.
Right.
So in other words, they're happy with the area that they live in, they're happy with their house they live in. So in other words, in Finland and Sweden, for example, in those countries, the poor live the same as the so a poor person's home is the equivalent of a middle class person's home in the UK.
Yeah.
You understand my point? Right?
Yeah.
So this is why you can't bring suicide into it. So
no, but I mean that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. People can on the outside. Let me say this. On the outside, yeah, people can have amazing lives, but that doesn't mean inside that they are content and happy. A lot of rich people will unalive themselves, not because they are poor and destitute, but because they're not happy and fulfilled.
Don't unalive themselves. We're exaggerating here. There are rich people who unalive themselves, but it isn't a lot.
Well, I'm using your equivalency that having material, living in a good house should equate to being happy. That's not going to be the case.
Well, like I said, don't take my word for it. Go in happiest countries in the world, yeah, and you look at how they do the statistics. They ask them about if they're happy with their government, they're happy with the house they live in, the area that they live in. So these people are obviously happy because. So in other words, in Finland, you have very low crime rates, right? This is how you level happiness as well, right?
I mean, I've got the map on screen that agrees with what you're saying. Generally, countries in the northern hemisphere happier than countries in the southern hemisphere.
Exactly. Yeah.
Australia.
We know in London we can't look. I ride a bike. We know I can't even the areas I can't even leave a bike in my own where I am currently. I can't even leave my bike outside. I have to take my bike inside, otherwise I find that my bike is stolen. Right. So this is the thing. Whereas in those countries, people can probably leave their bike without worrying about it being bloody taken from their bloody garden. We know in the UK you got to lock your stuff in and put certain stuff inside your house. You know what I mean? This is up and down the country of the UK. So you know what I mean? We you know what I mean? Like I said.
Okay. Well, I mean, we you know, no. That's a great introduction that you made. We understand. We understand, bro. What you're saying. Are you basically saying that Black people, African people, should go without religion, stop religion, and that will make their nations and their mental state?
I think it would help. I think it would help because how we were able to become the best slaves to both the Arabs and to the whites was because we believed that God would deliver us, right? They tried it with their own race. They just found out they just died. The white man got purple. They tried it with the Muslims themselves. They just commit suicide, right?
Many Black Africans committed suicide before being transported to wherever they were going.
No, I'm saying is we went through it. No, most of us went through it and said God would deliver us. Whereas their mindset, the Asians, was that they would kill themselves. Given the opportunity, they kill themselves. We didn't do that. We just soldiered on and said, "No, we'll take the whipping, we'll take the thing. God will, you know what I mean? What do we always say? God see and know, yeah. Everything we believe that God will. I mean, that is what we believe in. You know what I mean? You growing up heavy Christian. What does the Bible tell you to do? If someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. And we literally, I mean, like I said, for me, I don't think we'd exactly follow it, but like I said, we
I mean, we could argue this based on your point. We can argue that if we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, even the trans-Saharan, the Islamic trade, that most of those Africans were not. They were practicing their own indigenous religion. They weren't under really a great influence in Christianity, Islam. From what I know, most of them had their own individual faiths. So therefore, your appliance of Christianity, turn the other cheek, being very kind of passive, isn't really applicable to those people, right? In terms of having a mindset that is very placid and very, do with me as you will, and God will deliver me. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain at that point in time, we're talking like from 1500 to up to like when most countries being colonized, like most Africans were following their own religion.
Well, let me say this: in 1225, which is where the Christian church became thing. And let me tell you, I watched. I don't think have you not seen the WhatsApp or that video that was going around where the old churches apologized for their role in slavery when they were beating us, and they were thing they taught us their version of what's called Western Christianity. The oldest version of Christianity is in Ethiopia called Eastern Christianity, which Bible, which is 1,000+ years old.
And Ethiopians, generally speaking, when we go back to what were they called, Abyssinia, they were very active. They were very active in slave trading and very kind of aggressive as a nation to their surroundings. Very dominant. And they were the earliest Christians in Africa.
Ethiopians have
right?
never been enslaved. You got to remember that they have the original version of the Bible. So there's the thing what we follow as black people is Western Christianity. In many African countries, they see a white man, they think they've seen God. No, but it's true. They see a white man, they say they don't need to go to church. And you've got the white Jesus, so you know what I mean. This is the thing in the Ethiopian Christian Bible. You don't just have a Bible like the King James Bible where you have pictures and stuff, right? And like I said, their Bibles is 1,000 years old, whereas the King James Bible is about 600 years old and only goes back 1,000. It goes back to 6,000 years old or whatever.
But I mean, the general precepts, whether it's Eastern, are they Orthodox or whatever, they follow pretty much the same kind of teachings, generally speaking.
Well, no, because the Ethiopian I'm an atheist, but I'm saying the Ethiopian Bible has the original stories and has stuff that the King James Bible don't have, and it's the original Christianity. So the Western Christianity, they took bits from the Eastern Christianity. They took the ones that they wanted to, so they gave us their version of of the Bible, right? Right.
Can I ask?
For example, the Ethiopian, theirs is called Scripture, right? Western Christianity, King James Version, they call the Bible. But you read the Bible, they talk about scriptures. They don't talk about the Bible. The difference between scripture and the Bible.
Can I ask? You're an atheist now, right?
Yeah, I'm an atheist, yes.
Were you raised under a religion?
Family, this is what happened. My dad's side, they're it's not past now with my mom here, but my dad's side, they're Rastas, 12 tribe of Israel. My mom's side, they're Christian church. So I'm the only one, as far as I know, that's an atheist. They're not actually happy about that, but yeah. I saw, like I said, I learned that basically if anything you want to do, you got to do it yourself. There's no God that's going to do that.
That's a strong point. I mean, does anyone disagree or agree with UK Arsenal? I mean,
okay, so this is going to be a bit contentious, right? But I do think that for most people, some level of hope is necessary. We talk about, for example, Black empowerment, Black upliftment to varying degrees, right? And how to transform positively this fictitious Black community. People do need a level of hope, right? My issue, personally, I don't think religion is so much the issue as is, perhaps the choices people make individually and collectively, This is the case in point because, I mean, at the end of the day, what is the significance of religion? It's got a big question mark over it, right? I've heard in the not in the comment section, on the stream a bit earlier that sort of technology would flourish if religion was abandoned. But at the end of the day, technology, for the most part, only exists to solve a problem. It doesn't just exist so the average person can look at it, examine it, dissect it, and become so fascinated with it. No, it don't exist for that. It was always built on solutions. So it's the same way when people ask the question of why Africa wasn't innovating during, for example, the Industrial Revolution, and it's simply because, right? What's the word? Invention is the mother of necessity or something
Yeah.
along them lines. Yeah. So in other words, you solve a problem if there is
If there's no need for it, you don't need to fathom
exactly,
it. You don't need to
exactly.
design
And other thing as well is that technology at the end of the day is capital, right? Same way land is capital, the same way that black bodies were capital during the transatlantic era. Yeah. It's all capital. So the reality is, if you're not in control of the technology, then you're at the mercy of the technology. Smartphones is a very instructive case. You understand? So I think it's very relative. The average person is not necessarily geared or tilted towards technological production and innovation. They're more so the end consumer. So it's all relative. Do you understand? The reason why you have smartphones is really pretty much for the sake of consolidating capital. And, you know, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So they don't just exist for like the delight. We can't exist as an island. We're integrated within this world. We have to participate in it. And so the smartphone, like I said, is to basically to serve a bigger picture for those who obviously have the capital concentrated in their hands. You know. So in essence, religion, like I said, I don't necessarily think is the problem, but I think the issue that you have is you don't have harmonized value systems. And I don't necessarily think it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. I think it's somewhat of an inevitability. You understand? It goes back to what I said about decentralized blackness in terms of understanding that our reference points are going to be different. You know, I even said in the comment section a bit earlier that atheism itself is not the rejection of a god. It's the rejection of Judeo-Christianity. The word atheism conceptually came out from, you know the late 18th century, the Enlightenment era, especially the one where you had a revolution in France and there was more of a transition towards the whole kind of free thinking movement, right? That's where atheism emanates from. So using, you know, I hope I'm making sense here. So an atheist in itself does not necessarily mean there is no God. It's just in the context of Western Christendom. I must be clear about it. So,
but the definition that I'm looking at,
let me clear up atheism as
one sec, you chaos. No, the
I'm
definition
talking
I'm
about
looking at,
the roots of it. I'm not saying how, obviously, you know, once something becomes generalized, then fine, atheism now can be extrapolated to unbelief in just whatever, yeah, cool. But I'm saying for me, looking at the roots of where the word emanates from and when it was first being used and gaining traction, right? I'm saying that it was the initial rejection of that. So for me, one thing I don't understand is that a lot of people, for instance, right, talk or point to the idea of the redemption of their identities as black people. If that is so, then people will become more versed in identifying maybe these certain ethnic groups or in quote tribes that their ancestors came from and understanding what it was they believed in, why they believed in it, and how they lived that out. Do you understand? Because let's not get it twisted. Atheism is just exchanging one European concept for another, aka the repudiation of Christianity.
but the etymology, which comes, it's going back to the ancient Greek, it basically ethos, godless or without God. So is that not just a general idea or thought process that I just don't believe in a higher power? There is no God, regardless of Christian or any Abrahamic.
But that's what I was going to answer. Basically, atheists say, look, we believe in proof, yeah? Like, for example, we know the grass is green, yeah? No one can argue that. That's true, and that's a fact, yeah? Right? This is just an example, yeah? So people say that God exists. So people say that God created the star and the sun and this. And we say, well, proof, yeah? So some people believe that there was a great explosion, which I don't believe in that myself. So, you know, I mean, we have differences even in atheism. But we believe in nature, yeah? We believe that, you know, just like if you do good to people, good comes your way, yeah? Right? Because they like to say that.
Karma? Isn't that karma?
Yeah, but we just don't believe in the concept of God because perfect example, like I said, is that, you know what I mean? If you say that, you know, if you talk about if you say that if you say there is God, then I will say to you, how comes there's all these stabbings and all these killings, and how comes all these countries who have churches and mosques and all these things have the highest crime rate, the highest pedophilia rate, the highest prostitution rates, and vice versa, right? Right, and the countries who don't have, who have little to no crime are atheists. Why is that? Why is it those people are happy? You talk about
Well, maybe because they have more stable states, right? And because most of these countries that you're citing, they were very religious back in the day. Like,
Look.
The Vikings became Christian. These are the ancestors of Sweden, Norway, the countries that are so-called happy. But they went through that process of being very steeped in religious. Their flags are based off of religious symbols.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm trying to say what I'm trying to say to you. When you talk to a Finnish man, I've talked to Swedish men. You speak to Swedish women. They never mention God, right? And I'm just trying to say to you. You talked about is religion creating a lot of narcissists. Yes, it is. In a Christian, Islam, all these other religious people, you find a lot of people are narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. Yeah. Yeah. Pervert, they're even more perverts than the ones who are not religious. Yeah.
But then again, for example, what about those eco kind of warriors? There's that famous little young woman in Sweden who she's doing a lot of eco work, right? I think she had a run-in with Andrew Tate. I'm pretty sure she's probably atheist, but isn't that also a sign of, like a me, look at me, I'm doing this for the good of you, me. Is that not a good example of, even without religion?
Well, she's about protecting the planet because we're destroying the planet as humans. I mean, like I said, that's just you can't really say look at me. She
I mean, there are people that will do charity work.
She doesn't understand.
There are people that will do charitable things and still want the spotlight on them because they're doing those things. So they're getting a sense of self-aggrandizement from doing these very good and noteworthy things. But I think
you want an indicator that'll help. That if religion, technology, all these things we have in life, who is it saying? Like, it's not really the problem; it's our usage of these things that becomes a problem. How responsible we are. Like smartphones. Smartphones are great. The problem comes when you're irresponsible with them. So that's what to look out for, is whatever someone's doing, like they want to save the planet, are they actually taking responsibility for that, or are they expecting other people to be responsible? And you'll find this out by holding them accountable. Then you'll start to see the hypocrisy, where they're trying to save the planet, but what are they doing themselves? They're driving around petrol vehicles and polluting and doing whatever it is they're doing. Yeah, that gremlin.
For example, Greta Thunberg, I get her, and she's the movement that we have in the UK. I forgot what it's called. What are they called again? The ones that are
Just Stop Oil? Just Stop Oil?
No, the other one, the big one. Something Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion.
Yes. So Extinction Rebellion, they're involved with the Pan-Africans. They're now under the pro-blacks and all that. Yeah, they've joined together now because that the pro-blacks are now, like I said, it's matriarchal. Yeah. So the woman now that's in charge of it now has got Extinction Rebellion on side anyway. But anyway, so what I'm trying to say to you is movements like Extinction Rebellion and her movement, Gretna thing, yeah, they're about the environment, and they're about no petrol cars. The problem, for example, they're about Teslas, yeah, electrical cars and stuff, right? But nobody wants to talk about what happens to the batteries when a Tesla dies. So she's young. So that's what I'm trying to say to you. She's young, but then she don't want to address. She don't have the understanding to realize that the global warming thing is a load of. You understand me, yeah? Because they talk about talk about Tesla being example electrical cars, but electrical cars are not going to solve the problem, because when the batteries die out and all these things, they have
how will they be processed and stuff like that?
Yeah. So, like I said, they created it. They're great for when they run, but the problem is that, like, for example, if you buy a Tesla battery nearly costs the same as a Tesla. So,
Right.
So,
but
they'll run for 5-10 years, and then when they can't run your car no more.
See, you realize that's the sort of trap. That's the trap there, because what they want people like us to be discussing the finer details of, like, is it really practical to have an electric vehicle? And let's argue that out forever. But while we're too busy debating it, they're playing their real agenda, the ulterior motive, which is control and exploitation. So we're distracted by having a conversation about electric vehicles when that was never really the objective. It's not really about saving the planet. It's not really about a better means of travel. It's about making us sort of dependent and controlling us.
It's true. What you're saying is true. I'm going to give you an example because I'm a vegan, right? They're not telling the public this, right? But the thing that uses the most thing, even more than petrol and diesel and all these other whatever petrols, right, is our consumption of meat, right? No government in the West especially will deal with it because they don't want to be told that you'd have to give up meat and become a vegan or vegetarian, yeah? That's what uses the most pollution. So when you see them cows and them sheep, a whole heap of sheep and that, and they go, you understand me, yeah? So our consumption of meat, that's really affecting the planet.
Okay, guys. We didn't deviate from the point. This was an extension of the point, so I really appreciate the lengthy discussion that we've had. I wanted a bit more time than usual because I think it's one of those topics that we can go everywhere with. But 3 hours coming in, I'm borging out, and I need to, like I said, give blood tomorrow morning. So I want to end this with just final thoughts on your thoughts, whether it be religion, narcissism, and how it might relate to Black or African people.
One
sec, bro. We'll go Billy the Goat, and we'll let you have the floor since you came in earlier. Okay. Let's have
shout out to the guys who were on the panel and now have left. Awesome. It's been a great discussion and conversation, so much appreciated.
It's a pleasure to have you on as always.
My departing words will be a kind of prognosis of what we can expect in the future. I'm afraid I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but looking at the literature and the way narcissism carries out, it's self-destructive, it's maladaptive, etc. We can expect things to basically collapse. We already see an increase. Narcissism is being cultivated into our culture, and it's increasing. So yeah, I'm sorry to say that it looks to be a bad conundrum we're facing.
Right. So it's only going to get worse, in your opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's right.
Yeah. One sec, Arsenal. You have the last word in a sec. But Billy the Goat, man, I really appreciate you coming up. Feel free to post your links into the chat anytime.
Thank you.
You're not a stranger here anymore. You're a friend. So I really appreciate your insight on narcissism. And salute to you.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, if ever you got more narcissism related questions, or feel free to pop by my channel or whatever. Sure. I'll be here to assist where I can. Thank you.
For sure. Awesome. Yeah, good night to you. Check out Billy the Goat's channel, man. A great channel. And last but not least, we've got UK Arsenal. What is your final thoughts with regards to this topic? Is religion turning Black people into narcissists, or is religion effective for Black African people?
For me, I was involved with 12 Tribe. I've seen narcissism there. It's always been there. But at the same time, we have to understand that for me, if it's my world, there's no religion. But in reality, looking at it from an unselfish point, some people need to have religion because we would be having the world would be even more of a dangerous place. Some people, they would be very dangerous if they didn't believe in some type of God. Yeah, so in a sense, I see where religion is needed because some people would be very dangerous. it would be that if you walked outside, you might be dead if someone never believed in some kind of God. And if you listen to these pastors, they literally tell you if they didn't believe in God, they'd be doing some mad shit. They tell you that. They tell me that they'd be behind some bars or something and would have killed somebody or some shit. Right? Again, this is so where you see the pastors doing what they do and sleeping with women and doing all this kind of thing. Because if you look at it, whether it's the conscious community, whether it's the Pan-Africans, the pro-blacks, or these religious organizations, a lot of these people who especially in the black church, who become people in the black church, they were ex-drug dealers, ex-scammers, you know what I mean? You need.
I hear you.
So, like I said, so they then obviously went to the church, which was just basically that they wanted to get. And we see that we see that sisters in the church. The sisters in the church, you know what I mean, don't want the church guys. They want to get a bad boy and transform him into one of the
right. We hear you. So, in your opinion, ideally, religion should not be there, but for some people who might need it and might need that support, it should be there for them, right?
Because some people, if they never believed in a God, they'd be, you know what I mean.
We hear you, man. UK Arsenal, man. I really appreciate you. We've been on there for long, so appreciate that. I need to get some shut eye, but I really appreciate you jumping on and giving us your thoughts. Hope you jump on the next streams. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. No problem.
Have a good night. Good one.
Good night.
Yeah. Take care. Well, I just want to appreciate everyone who came in on the panel in this long live stream. Everyone who came through in the live chat to discuss this. I know we probably went all over the place, but I hope that you get some informative nuggets from this stream. I appreciate everyone who came through the super chat. I really appreciate Diego Harry, aka Diego Ife, and JM Talks channel, and everyone else who came on the panel. As always, every Friday.
Search results.
That's okay, Siri. But with that being said, every Friday, of course, expect the Falcon Blizzard live stream, videos throughout the week. Look forward to them. And yeah, with that being said, please do like the video on your way out. Comment your thoughts after we're live in the comment section. And yeah, with that being said, have a good night. Peace.